has shown nerves of steel in those Armageddons, first taking down Maxime Vachier-Lagrave in a tense battle, and then yesterday prevailing against Vladimir Fedosiev. Today, taking on Alireza Firouzja. It's going to be a big battle because when I think of these two players, I feel their styles are so similar. Both of them aggressive, intuitively attacking players, combative by nature, neither backs down. Both speed monsters. What can we say about this matchup, Robert? And where do you see this being the decisive? What will be the decisive factor here?
I think we're about to get a roller coaster ride because, as you said, Tanya, they do have some similarities, and those similarities revolve around their tactical style. They may play openings that are ferocious. They want to throw everything at the other, but they need to hit that brake pedal at times, and that has been a struggle for both of these two throughout their careers. Of course, Jan, the more experienced of the two players, but Alireza Firouzja, as we saw in classical chess and Tata Steel, he can beat the best in the world, but he can also slip when he doesn't hit that brake.
And it will be a best of two, David. So very little margin for error. And there we see their pre-game preview. For Alireza, he's made more appearances in the Champions Chess Tour. Is experience in this format going to be a factor?
Could well be. Alireza is an expert in online chess, and look at the stats there. So similar, not that much between them in terms of chess.com rapid rating, day rating, and even the head-to-head. 8 wins to 6 in the Pomnishi's favour is very close. This will come down in a clash with two players with the highest possible ceilings, who are both just fantastic players. It will come down to who handles them. And I would say Nepomniachtchi's maybe slightly better in the opening phase with that World Championship experience behind him, but Alireza is a speed.
A big fight. It is the fight to make it to play against Stanislazovic to golden ticket to the season. It's going to be Alireza.
He does have the bye into the next round, and I actually think Dennis has been playing amazing chess. He took down Magnus yesterday. We have to wait until later in the day to see him go at it. But between Alireza and Jan, I'm going to go with Magnus Carlsen. Not to win the match, but what he said yesterday. He said Alireza felt like the favorite to him. I'm going to agree. And I think that Jan, he was shaky yesterday. He was shaky in the earlier matches as well. So Alireza will be my pick to go through.
And what do you guys think? What are the chances that this match goes to the wire, that we get an Armageddon here, David?
I think if we got an Armageddon, it might be after a couple of roller coaster battles, a bit of a comeback from one of the sides. I don't really see this being two board draws and straight to the decider. I think if we do get an Armageddon, which would be fun to watch, then it might be after some blood has already been spilled.
I'm rooting for an Armageddon. I just love the intensity of playing without increment. Just the tension and the nerves that we see. So perhaps we might have more of that today coming up. And as we edge closer to the finish line of the first event of the Champions Chess Tour Season 24, the Chessable Masters, the finish line is in sight. The big thing for all of us to remember is that this season there are 4 events. 4 winners will qualify to season end final. We've had a different time format, 10+2. Break it down.
The Champions Chess Tour consists of 1 live final. Each tournament open to all grandmasters. Players from the play-in will be joined on the second day by the 4 qualifiers from the previous tour event. Match play with 73 players will then determine placement across all 3 divisions. Division play then commences with 6 days of double elimination brackets. The last players standing are your winners. The winner of Division 1 qualifies directly to the CCT Finals. The winner of Division 2 secures a spot in Division 1 at the next tour event, while the winner of Division 3 is guaranteed at least a spot in Division 2. In each event, players also accrue points for the season-long leaderboard. The final standings will decide who joins our Division 1 winners at the year-end CCT Live Finals. Each regular season event will feature a whopping $300,000 prize pool, while the final 8 players will battle it out for their Champions Chess Tour. So tune in. Best chess players in the world.
Just a few seconds from now, we will have the first moves between Jan Nepomniachtchi and Alireza Firouzja in their best of 2. Very little margin for errors. And before they kick off, I want to talk about the opening approach by these 2 players. Robert, what are we expecting? Each of them gets only 1 white. What is going to be their strategy coming into this match?
I feel like I expect the unexpected, in particular when it comes to Jan Nepomniachtchi. He'll throw the King's Gambit out there. He'll trot out some main lines, but then also some sidelines. So for Jan, I really don't know what's going to come from him. And same holds true for Alireza. They're both wild cards.
I'm actually going to predict that one of them might start a bit more solidly. That will be Alireza Firouzja. When he has black, he has shown a willingness to just set up stall and just try to lock the game down. With white, I totally agree with Robert. He's going to go all in. He's going to try something a bit more special, trying to find a new gear, and that could be key. Who strikes with the white pieces, who gets onto the front foot first. But there we see Alireza, not yet at the board. There we go, sitting down. He looks ready to fight.
We can see the fair play cameras behind the player as well here, ready to fight. And a fight is what we are going to get between these 2. I'd love to see a King's Gambit on the board, not gonna lie. That's going to be exciting. But we've seen the King's Gambit get a bit demolished over the last couple of weeks in certain games at the top levels. So maybe it's too much on the line to play the King's Gambit, but it's definitely going to be a fun one if he does go for it. When it comes to these time scrambles, when it comes to the mouse skills, when it comes to speed chess, who in the Chessable Masters out of these 2 has shown better control on nerves and better form, David?
It's tough to call. I mean, both of them have been shown inconsistency at times. I would say if it's pure time scramble, but yeah, in general, Jan, I think his clock handling also been a bit patchy at times. So really tough one to call. What about you, Robert?
Yeah, I'm with you. We saw Alireza Firouzja in the Bullet Chess Championship. We know how capable he is. And for Jan Nepomniachtchi, it has felt a bit shaky. I mean, even getting through to this stage by taking down Vladimir Fedoseev, there was quite a bit of fortune. He did have the upper hand. He won Fedoseev's queen, but that final position, just before he won the rook, it was actually Fedoseev who should have had a draw in hand. So I think Jan Nepomniachtchi, he's counting his blessings. It's a new day and it's a new opponent, but they get no less fierce.
Yeah, Nepomniachtchi back with the Barca jersey, but no Catalan on the board. Starts with the King's Pawn opening. E4 played the Spanish, and we have a Berlin. Anyone surprised?
Not too surprised. I did mention that Alireza Firouzja has been employing the Berlin a lot lately. I'm pleased, though. I'm pleasantly surprised to see Jan Nepomniachtchi not ending off for a black knight, damaging the black pawn structure slightly, and now the game will take a slower maneuvering kind of nature. But yeah, Robert, it looks like Alireza trying to be solid at this early stage, yet he's the first one to think.
It's funny because this is mainline theory, but there are different options. He brings his queen out to d6. Some players like to slide their bishop back to defend this pawn on e5. Others will retreat their knight back to d7 because you want to create a pawn chain. But this queen move up to d6, it walks into the line of fire. Wow! Speaking of firing, b4 Tanya, I don't think I've seen this before. This is a pawn sacrifice going after the black bishop, but that bishop can just take the pawn.
Is this a novelty? B4, I've never seen it before. Robert's not seen it before. David, are you at all familiar with this pawn sacrifice? And what happens if black actually gets greedy? We're about to find out.
We're finding out the proof in the eating. How does it work? You've got to essentially, you have to grab material if you want to refute your opponent's idea. Instead of timidly retreating, Alireza says, yes, I'm taking that pawn. And I can confess, I have studied this position before. I can't remember exactly how the line goes, but essentially it's long, it's forcing, and black is forced essentially to find some really creative defenses just to cling on and survive. So I really love this idea by Jan Nepomniachtchi. I believe it's been played in the past by the likes of Jules Moussard, French grandmaster, and Alireza, he's been caught off guard! Exclamation mark from this last move. It reminds me, Robert, of a Evans gambit, but in the Spanish opening. Why just throwing away for a pawn for a couple of tempo?
It makes perfect sense once I see it on the board. I would be too afraid to give a pawn, as Jan Nepomniachtchi just did, and Alireza is in for a think, but I do believe the bishop has to slide in this direction. The downside of going to a5 is it allows the diagonal and probably prevent black. If the bishop goes to c5, if it can bring a direct plan from the white side, you give away a flank pawn so that you continues to take things, then you b4, but it wins a knight. You move the queen, you lose the. After c3, the bishop has that wasn't my doing, but the white. I do think there is going to be some trouble. This is Tanya. I haven't seen it before. I want to play it myself.
B4 on the board. I was surprised, especially the kind of opening that you employ. Minutes on the clock to deal with all these questions. It's a lot easier to answer these kinds of sacrifices early on. Clock early on, and the problems hitting that queen, more importantly, center, eventually white's knight from via d2, c4, there's a d4, and black's still far away. I'm loving the compensation already. How does black react? How does black get his king to safety here?
Safety is just one of the several problems. Move, how to react with the black. You need to sidestep, I believe, 6 just to keep your central pawn, black queen, to defend the e5 square. It's about the clock, Tanya. That already 2.5 minutes down on the clock. Firouzja, he's going to have to hope potentially that he can even castle back, castling into the eye of essentially there's no other. All these questions are going to keep a its threats. Firouzja, I'm 6 minutes and it's only just work. This is what we talked about. World Championship preparation. He's studied all the intricacies. Robert, we're expecting either the center to blow open or white to just keep improving pieces, keep developing.
Yeah, knight to d2 up to c4, which was one of Tanya's main ideas, and it's a perfectly good developing try. But is it worth giving up a second pawn? Because if you move your knight out, you no longer defend this pawn on c3. I'm curious how Jan continues. I'm also noting that he has slowed down. So he sacrificed a pawn. Now he's spending some time. So how much theory does he have here? Alireza clearly on his own, and Jan playing a top move. I see that the engine has not changed its evaluation. Queen a4. This bishop can go back to b6, or I guess you could play pawn to b6, but then that bishop on a5 is really stuck, and I feel like white can go after it later. So difficult choices here for black. And b6 also, knight takes e5 becomes an idea with the c6 pawn being loose all of a sudden. Oh, I do not envy the task for Alireza Firouzja. I would quickly try to play bishop b6, but I don't know how I'm going to castle as the king is stuck in the center. This bishop on a3, such a nasty piece, making sure the king can't castle through check. Tanya, I worry for Alireza here.
That's a really nice tactic that you spotted, especially after b6, that the queen on e6 is overloaded. And Jan's last move, queen to a4, also clearly shows why Alireza could not have blocked the attack from that bishop on a3 to the queen on d6 with the move c5 earlier on, because you really want to castle. But c5 would have landed queen to a4 with a check, winning the bishop on a5. Wow. And look at that. He walks into the tactics that you've been talking about, Robert. b6 on the board. Queen is overloaded on e6. Knight takes pawn. It would not only neutralize the material that's been given, not only recapturing the pawn, puts pressure on c6. Black's king still in the center. And Jan, he smells blood right now, David. Look at him.
You're right. Look at that camera. He was frowning for a moment. He was surprised clearly, visibly, by that last move. It looks like a kind of elementary blunder. But of course, Firouzja has a deeper plan. Jan's just trying to figure that out. Look at him frowning on the camera. I'm trying to figure it out. What is the idea? Knight takes e5 looks automatic, regaining the material balance, but also continuing the threats. I guess Black might want to move the light squared bishop out the way. There we go. Alireza immediately does that, and the Black king is almost ready to castle queenside. Problems here, though, still persist, Robert. The Black dark squared bishop lacking squares, a point you highlighted earlier, still doesn't look safe, and now he's not even suffering for anything. He's not even a pawn up anymore.
Knight c4, it would be the move I'm playing in bullet chess. This bishop has nowhere to go, and I'm going to take it on the next turn. And I guess the engine, perhaps Alireza, does not mind the completely shattered pawn structure that will arise after this knight takes on a5. And once this b pawn takes, you have two sets of double isolated pawns on the queen side, and yet Black does feel quite coordinated with the queenside castle coming. A rook that lands on d8 will put pressure on this loose pawn on d3. White isn't fully developed. I think we're seeing all of this. You have to take on a5 for White at some point, and look at this pawn structure. This is what I'm talking about. Double isolated pawns. Oh, it looks atrocious, and yet this rook on d8, that is getting the green light because it hits this d3 pawn, which protects this e4 pawn. Could White's position fall apart, Tanya?
It's hard for me to imagine that happening. I mean, I'm looking at the board right now, and I am loving Jan's position. That queen on a4 eyeing the a5, a7 pawn, which you don't even have to necessarily pick up right now. You can first defend your d3 pawn and then start targeting these two pawns on the a file. The bishop from a3 could land on c5 at some moment, putting more pressure on a7. The only thing that I'd love White to have is to improve and develop the pieces on the queen side. Give White two moves, that knight lands on c4 via d2, and it feels like it would be close to game over. The bishop on b7 is long-term blocked, not only by his own pawn on c6, but by the pawn on e4 as well. I think Black is really far away, David, from creating attack against White's king, while White already has open lines on the queen side to start directing play on Black's king. What do you think? Is Black's position, compensation worth it here for these doubled pawns?
I'm going to have to agree with you, Tanya. My eyes here, I can't get past the kind of aesthetics of the position, how ugly that black pawn structure is. Actually, until this last move, I was going to ask you, Robert, to do one of your favorite things. If the white pawn were back on c2 rather than on c3, a beautiful pawn chain, White would just have everything protected and it would just be game over. White would have no weaknesses. It's unfortunate that Jan has to retreat with the white queen, because as Tanya mentioned, the white queen wanted to get kind of hungry there and start eating up these black pawns. But ultimately, he knows long-term he's doing very well here. And actually, this is quite a classy move, I feel, queen to c2, not getting impatient, knowing that you have the better structure. And as Tanya points out, the knight is topping the white knight. Two moves, if you get to d2, b3, or anywhere into the black position, and it's just game over. So, Robert, Alireza, 4 minutes now, 2 minutes down on the clock, the urgency of the position. Do you see him saving this?
Urgency is the operative word here, that he needs to act fast, as you're both are pointing out, that if White just gets a few moves, maybe pawn to f3 just to ensure that the e4 pawn is defended, and even then pawn to d4, Black is just toast, because the white pieces will just hop around, and black cannot create pawn tension because all of these pawns are isolated. If this pawn were back on b6, we'd be singing a different tune. But with the pawn on a5, it looks terrible. c5 won't be so attractive. So I don't really see easily how black goes after those pawns, but you need to probably flick in a move like c5 at some point, because bishop a6, it's a one-move threat against the d3 pawn, but white will push this pawn to c4 with a bishop on a6, saying, you're not getting any access. And in fact, you actually are making your king side, or the queen side in this case, but that's where the black king is, even less safe. So I don't like the look of this. He does play bishop a6. I think c4 is mandatory, but that's not even my highlight. That's the blue arrow telling us an only move from the white side. But this d3 pawn is a long-term target. So Tanya, I kind of feel like I'm agreeing with you. I still feel like Alireza has some outside chances. And wait a second, is that a pawn?
It definitely looks like one. The pawn on d3 is pinned, rook d1 hanging. You can't really capture the knight back on e4. And maybe Alireza just has to snap it up. For whether white has compensation or not, Jan will have to prove it. Right now, Alireza is under 3 minutes. He needs to start moving. He needs to speed things up right now. If he doesn't grab material, there's very little to play for. And he does it. Knight takes pawn. I'm expecting white to develop the knight. Could not have taken the knight on e4. Queen into rook was hanging. Not just a rook, you lose your king as well. It's a checkmate. I still think there's a lot of compensation for this pawn that's been sacrificed. a5 is hanging. Well, g7 is hanging, but I'm not sure if you really ever want to pick up that pawn and open the g line. Might not be a good idea. I'm expecting white to continue bringing the rook into activity right now. Rook to b1, line up on the open b line. Opposite color bishops, it's all about the attack on your opponent's king, David.
Yeah, and it's just about whether Jan Nepomniachtchi can generate that attack against the Black King. I was just reminded of that line from the Queen's Gambit, all pawns and no hope. Those black pawns, so ugly right now. Then again, opposite colour bishops do give black the opportunity at a later moment to bail out. If the queens ever disappear, we'll be completely kind of revising our assessment of this position. So suddenly urgency on Firouzja's part, of course, due to the clock. But this boring Berlin is far from boring right now. And Jan, suddenly the urgency is on him to actually checkmate black while he has the opportunity. If he allows Alireza to survive the next 5 moves, Robert, we could really see a turnaround. He's a pawn down after all, Jan Nepomniachtchi suddenly.
And I see how the turnaround happens. You give black a free move, in comes a rook to e2, threatening checkmate against the white king. And let's be clear, even if this queen somehow gets to b8, the black king steps up to d7, and I don't see a follow-up. The evaluation bar, even. The clocks, they're evening up, although Jan Nepomniachtchi still has a substantial lead. It was even larger before, but he has to invest time because black's next move is pretty clear. And yeah, I can play rook to d2, but now I'm getting passive, and black can still go on offense. We're going to see a rook lift from the black side, and I'm actually starting to prefer black's position. Now, earlier, it looked ugly, bad pawn structure. Black is a pawn ahead and has a clearer plan. So am I maybe over? Come on to my side, which is saying that Alireza's position, there is some hope here.
I never thought I would say this, given the start of this position, but I completely see all your points. The rook lift is incoming, whether to the 2nd rank or the 6th rank to move towards the king side. It looks like danger, but I just want to push a little bit on this line that you were pointing out. I don't think that white should fall back to b2 because the d3 pawn will fall. Like you pointed out, the king is actually pretty safe on d7. But Robert, your other line that you were earlier looking at, that if black's rook was to get to e2, I think there is a key defensive resource in white's position. Imagine white goes queen b3, rook to e2, I give a check on b8. Let's have that on the board. And I actually think that white can snap up this pawn on a7. And the bar creeps up, and it looks like things are under control. And like you're pointing out, that from a7, I'm not only hitting that bishop on a6, but I'm actually defending the pawn on f2. So I'm just wondering, David, if white can just start going on the offense and not be too scared about rook e2 here.
Tanya, I think he could have done, and he should have done, because if we go back to the game, instead Jan Nepomniachtchi plays a real passive move. Look at him on the camera, shaking his head. He knows this is turning, and as soon as you start stepping back with your pieces, you know instinctively the momentum turns as well. The white bishop is aiming to sit on a nice pretty square like e3, but will you get that time? Will you get that luxury? Black first has a move, still 2 minutes for Firouzja, so not easy. but even a move such as queen to e5, forcing the queens off pretty much. I'm looking at the white back rank. I don't think Nepomniachtchi can continue. There we go, the most natural move. I don't think he can continue being ambitious in this game. I think now it's all about actually kind of backpedaling and trying to secure a draw. He's a pawn down after all, and again on the camera, he was dancing around with his head there. He knows, Robert. He knows this has gone a bit wrong.
And there is X marks the spot for a miss, but I'm going to disagree with the engine for a black advantage are not realistic for human players because it's the black king that looked like it was under attack. And as you point out a long time ago, without queens on the board, the black king's in no danger. The pawn structure is ugly, but let's not forget that white also has a pawn that needs to have a caretaker. So this pawn on d3 is going to keep white's rooks stuck in place. White has shut down a lot of black's plans, and black has shut down a lot of white's plans. By the way, bishop f4 move to play. What is the response after bishop f4? Rook d6 because of back rank? Oh.
So sneaky. Firouzja, he's the trickster. 1 minute something on his clock, but he finds such devilish tactics like that. Wow, that's just tempting the opponent, provoking the opponent. Looks like a beginner's blunder again, but that skewer doesn't quite pay off for white. Tanya, do you agree? This is turning. Who do you think is the favorite now?
D6, bullet beast Firouzja, just finding these tactics with a minute on the clock. And I was on the edge earlier, David, but now I think I am moving towards Robert's side about this position, the evaluation of this position. Black has an extra pawn. The rooks are extremely active. The d3 pawn, a constant target. Opposite color bishops give black not only a safety net, but also always that bishop can fall back to b7 and start targeting white's king side as well. And this on his terms. He wants his pawn structure to get better, which is why Jan refuses. He's not going to take on b6 and allow Alireza to improve his pawn structure. The bishop falls back. It just feels that black has easier moves to make. At some point, the king side pawns can start advancing, going up the board, trying to create a weakness, g5, g4 ideas. Once it's defended, I'm really liking black here, David.
I've got to agree. I think with two huge favorite here, but the clock ticking down, we might just get an answer to our question about who handles time pressure better, because we're reaching that stage. And look at the big threats that are appearing suddenly. White's king, a pawn in front of it was attacked, and okay, it's hanging by a thread for the white king side right now, but Jan, he's hoping that everything holds together, and he's looking to the other flank where those weak black pawns finally might just start dropping off. Robert here, does Firouzja have to go passive, or does he continue with this active?
If Firouzja can get two moves at once, pawn to f4 is winning for black. And the reason why, this bishop on b7, it was a horrible piece for most of the game. Now it has the full length of the diagonal. So if black can land a back rank check, it won't just be check, it will be checkmate. Because once the rook, if it could jump over, and here's the big threat, rook b1, the king would have to go, and then the rook would land behind the king with checkmate, thanks to the full scope of the diagonal from this bishop. So I know this black rook went back and forth, but there's so many weak squares, and a bishop can plant itself on f3 at any moment. I fear for the white king, which is such a strange thing to say, considering earlier on it was the black king in danger. So I prefer Alireza's position still, although Jan is doing everything right to keep the balance.
Yeah, Jan has managed to, David, keep the balance. I just want to make one point that it was so instructive that Alireza before returning with the rook, actually making that bishop on b7 an absolute monster, making sure that he has this f3 stronghold in white's camp. So really instructive there, David, to provoke pawn moves, to provoke weaknesses in the position.
I know, I mean, I get the impression here, Firouzja, he's just playing on the dark squares now. He's trying to set up a fortress on that color complex. But yeah, that black rook on the 6th rank was almost ready to swing on over. I think Jan, he's guarding against the threats. It's only under 20 seconds for Firouzja. The problem with creating threats like this is you're kind of committing. Suddenly the black rook on h5 is totally stuck. The other rook on the other flank totally stuck. And it could be turning because Firouzja is committed to this activity when maybe he didn't have the luxury to do so. Suddenly Jan Nepomniachtchi, he's going for those weak pawns, and it's just a race. Black's attack versus white just hoovering up vacuuming up those pawns. Robert, chaos has been enacted.
I would rather have Jan Nepomniachtchi's time, but Alireza Firouzja's king. And whoa, G4. Look at Jan right here. The pawn actually can take because there's a G3 check. Look at this vision from Alireza. It looked impossible. You gave up your rook. That was a brilliant choice because otherwise white would have had the edge. Now we have an opposite colored bishop position with rooks on the board, and black, don't forget, is up a pawn. So Tanya, still outside chances for Alireza because of this outside pass pawn.
Superb defense and resources and offense by both these players. It almost felt like Alireza missed G4, and then Jan missed that G4 pawn can be captured by Alireza's pawn, giving this tactic of G3 check, keeping the balance by regaining that rook. And now the position that we have, black is still up a pawn, but with the rook defending that A5 pawn, all the pawns disconnected, 8-6 being a weakness. I think this game is heading towards a draw, David.
Towards a draw, maybe, but Alireza with 6 seconds, oof, he's still got to keep up the pace. Yesterday, we saw Magnus Carlsen lose on time. 2-second increment isn't much, so he still has to keep his guard up, but he's doing everything right here with black to stay safe. Suddenly, the white rook is the one that's slightly misplaced offside. I wouldn't be surprised, actually. All 3 results still possible. Draw, yes, the most likely, but Alireza creating threats, hitting pawns. This is, wow, really not great for the nerves. 5 seconds, every move he's making.
Trapped. The bishop's trapped.
The bishop.
Oh my goodness, he had to give it up to get a pass pawn. If black can get rid of white's 2 pawns here, even though white will have an extra bishop, drawing chances, but that was a blunder and a great find from Jan Nepomniachtchi, who now has a nearly winning advantage, according to the computer.
But he needs to keep this one pawn alive. Otherwise, it might be a rook bishop versus rook, which is a theoretical draw. So d6 was the only move. You need to keep this pawn guarded. Alireza will do everything to try to win it, but with it being on a dark square, the bishop will defend it. The players playing on seconds. Both players under 10 seconds. It's still a bit tricky to convert, David.
Really tricky. Watch out for those black pawns that are running. The black rook often aiming to deliver some checks or swap off for the white rook. But white's rook is coming now with a check. The pawn promotes on a dark square. Can he force it through? Brute force. It's a pawn race, Robert. Who's going to make a queen first?
Apparently both players are making mistakes. The rook goes back to a7, defending and attacking. And look at this position. Both sides could blunder at any turn, and watch out, there was a skewer on the 7th rank. The king steps out. I think that Alireza now is feeling more confident, but look at him. He stared up at the clock, trying to make sure that he has enough time left to execute his plan.
Black's pawn is 1 square away from touchdown. He's taking big risks here, Nepomniachtchi, to try and win this game, but black is on the brink of making a new queen. Surely now is the time to bail out to safety. We might see a repetition in this position repeating itself, but Jan plays for the win yet again. Oh, he's taking risks now.
But where is the win? You can't defend the A pawn from queening. He's giving up his own strong pawn to come back with the rook, but this is rook bishop versus rook.
Oh my goodness, this game is just getting started, everybody, because if you're Jan Nepomniachtchi, you play it out forever. You try to do what Vladimir Fedoseev did against Magnus Carlsen. You need to get this pawn and then force black on the defense. So, David, in this kind of endgame, we know theoretically it should be a draw. In fact, to the left of the board, it says TB. In the middle, table-based draw. But can Alireza hold this with mere seconds on his clock?
It's not going to be easy. That black pawn now sits on a dark square. It should be possible even to surround that pawn a bit later. And as we saw, Magnus Carlsen even lost on time in this endgame, struggling to find the defense. And look at this, the pawn about to land, but it gets blocked and it will surely get captured at some point. I still believe in Firouzja. His clock, look at it, 10 seconds now. He's gaining time. He's pre-moving. He's such a speed demon. But Robert, I feel there's going to be chances. Like you said, it's just starting. We might see 50 more moves now that that pawn has disappeared and the counter starts. This is move 89 and still a long, long way to go before Alireza is able to save this game. Robert, Tanya, we need to predict. What do we think? Is he going to hold?
With 14 seconds on a draw, I am predicting an Alireza hold here. I think he will do this. What a find it was by him to even save, to even manage to get it to this position. I think he's got it in him, Robert, to manage to hold this one and save the draw.
He's got 15 seconds left. If he had 5 seconds, I would still think that he has it in him because he's putting his rook on the light squares. This is key, everyone. You want to keep your rook on the opposite color of your opponent's bishop. He keeps going the light squares. He tries to offer a trade of rooks. King and bishop versus king for our newer members of the audience. That is a draw. So a rook trade, it favors black. And with the 2-second increment, every single move that's played, it grows your time on the clock. That's what Alireza is counting on. Look at this. 2 squares away, any check, the king could slide and protect that rook. So I'm thinking this should be a draw, especially by how quickly Alireza is playing.
Grandmasters in the world, they've practiced this, they've studied this, they've spent dozens, maybe even hundreds of hours playing rook and bishop versus. Even then, it's difficult, impossible to memorize specific moves. Of course, you just have to know the setups. And look how Firouzja, he's using something we call the third rank defense, where just a couple of lines away from being forced into the corner, he's able to set up this blockade on the light squares on the opposite color complex to his opponent's bishop. But if the black king gets pushed to the edge, that's when the trouble might start. He's done everything right so far, though, and still, I'm just looking at the move counter, still 25 moves or so before the 50 move rule. So he's survived this long. If he survives as long, he's got halfway now. If he continues to do this, he's got the draw in the bank. It's getting close, but still Nepomniachtchi not quite finding the breakthrough. This is frustrating, Robert.
It's definitely frustrating, but it's great defense from Firouzja. As David's been saying, if the black king is kicked to the side of the board, the boundary can only help white. And now that the rook and the king for black are separated, Jan may feel like he has some chances, and only if he cuts the king off. But look at Alireza. He puts his rook right back on the light square, and that means that it's harder and harder to get this king to the rim. Tanya, this is great defense from Alireza, but still some time left for Jan to get that king to where he needs it to be.
Incredibly instructive. Exactly 20 moves left for Jan Nepomniachtchi to make progress. Where do you get the king? You get it to the edge of the board. He's managed to separate the king and the rook, but the way Firouzja is playing, the way he's held that third rank defense, it's clear that he knows how to hold this position. But there's still going to be a moment where he'll have to make those accurate moves. And now, with the king and rook separated, David, this is the other defensive structure in these positions.
He's been forced one row back, but now it's the second rank defense, where black on his own second rank here, the 7th, from white's point of view, he's holding the line. He's not allowing any checks. And if the white bishop ever tries to move, he'll kick the white king away. He's doing perfectly. This is one to study for everyone at home. This is a defensive master class. Still, Jan Nepomniachtchi unable to break through. Still has to be careful, Firouzja, but he's edging ever closer now. Only a few moves left. 5 more moves, I believe. And we will see this game declared drawn. So impressive, Robert.
This is great defense, perfect defense from Firouzja, continuing to keep the king. And that was like, what was that from Jan? He gave away his rook, and now it's Alireza who can play for the win. It's still a draw, everybody, but that was ridiculous.
That has to be a mouse slip. Rook to be what? Oh my god! And now it's a 50 move counter, and it's Jan Nepomniachtchi who has to make it through that. Of course, the defensive resource is that you put your king on the corner, which is the opposite color of your own bishop, where Jan is already. But it's Alireza who's trying for a win now, David.
Game that never ends. It's a real marathon here. Clearly, Nepomniachtchi loves playing chess so much that he wanted to entertain us with another 50 moves. Remember, rook and bishop versus rook was a draw. This is also a draw, arguably even easier, but still a lot of work to do to prove it. There's going to be checkmating ideas against the white king. The problem is the black king can never obtain the opposition and sit opposite the white king, and therefore there's always one escape square. But Nepomniachtchi confidently building up time here. 40 seconds left. There's still a chance he might blunder. It's still possible to go wrong. But these top players, finally it's a draw, Robert.
Did you see that? He gave away his rook. So a bit of humor between these two. Jan Nepomniachtchi, he did have the upper hand. Once Alireza lost his bishop, he trapped his own piece. But a draw feels like the fair result. But Tanya, what a fight that was between these two.
From start to finish, from the opening in Berlin, finding this idea, playing it out, sacrificing a pawn, 4-piece activity, a completely crazy position with opposite side castling, both players going for each other's king with amazing defensive resource. Saw them hold a balance. Things got crazy in the time scramble, eventually ends in a draw. with some drama at the end. Loved every bit of it. We've got their final rapid game coming up. David, this one is exactly how you predicted it would be, a very close fight.
Fight. It could have gone either way ultimately. Nepomniachtchi started hot, started strong with an opening bomb, but Firouzja defended resolutely, got some chances himself, but had to defend in the end after getting his bishop trapped. Roller coaster. Could have gone either way, and I think actually Firouzja, the happier of the two.
He drew with the black pieces. How could he not be the happier of the two? And they did have some smiles on their faces because there was that slip from Jan, and then Alireza said, you have this under control. You know the theoretical draw, so I don't want to play this out anymore. But Tanya, I mean, that game, I think it probably shakes players. Even if Alireza got the draw with black, that's the desired result. It wasn't a solid draw. It was a rocky road there.
Never going to be a solid. And was really dramatic. It's going to be a fun fight. That's the opening. This game, he starts with white. What are we expecting from Jan? How does he keep things under control with black in this one, David?
He's trying to figure it out as well, just munching away, snacking up, and coming up with an opening strategy. A bit of a shake of the head there from Firouzja. Maybe frustrated that he was on the back foot for most of that game. But Jan, if he employs his World Championship repertoire, he might start with the Petrov defense. That will be the ultimate sign of respect to Firouzja. And that will indicate that Jan's happy with the draw, wants to go to Armageddon. But even that, I mean, the players have to be thinking kind of 2-3 steps ahead. Ooh, in the Armageddon, will I be the favorite? What color do I want there? I mean, like you said, Tanya, no boring draws here. That was 162 moves. And that's my favorite type of chess, but the players are going to be feeling the heat, the exhaustion already.
So much tension. This game could be the end of the road for one of these two players. It is the final rapid game. Robert, what are you expecting? Are you expecting more cautious, safety first approach? Or will one of them want to take this, want to go all out, take this game?
Throwing pieces at one. In store, because we should give credit where it's due. Jan played an excellent opening, and he caught Alireza by surprise.
It caught Alireza by surprise, but also impressive how Alireza took his time in the opening and was able to handle that pressure, was able to combat all those attacking tactical ideas by Jan. And talking about attacking tactical ideas, we've got a Jabava London. David, does this surprise you?
Yes and no. Alireza actually started with one knight to c3, a really rare move at the top level, but the last time he played it was against Jan Nepomniachtchi at the Tata Steel Masters, where using the Jabava London by transposition, he actually wiped Jan off the board in under 30 moves. So he has great experiences from the white side Firouzja against Jan in recent history. But of course, when you repeat the same opening, your opponent will have studied it, and Jan mixes up his, or kind of switches up his openings here. He doesn't employ the same variation he did. And wow, look at this. Nepomniachtchi kind of giving a frown there, trademark facial expression from him. But Alireza is going for fire on the board. G for go, that G pawn launching forward. And big threats already on the board, Robert. This is, again, shaping up to be a big, big fight.
And look at Jan. He decides to ignore it for now by creating threats of his own on the b2 pawn. And yes, this g5 move, it looks annoying. You're kicking the knight, but you may also welcome it into the center. And trades, they don't necessarily hurt black. It's white who is lacking in development because you're pushing pawns instead of developing pieces. Doesn't seem particularly familiar with this position. Tanya, sometimes these opening tricks and traps, you may trick yourself because when your opponent just plays quite standard chess, you may have created some holes and weaknesses in your own camp.
And it is a bit, it surprises me that Alireza played g4. We were excited to see this move. And then queen b6, a natural looking pawn, you get your queen to a square with these lines. And then Alireza takes a long think right now. It feels like he came up with the surprise, but then he surprised himself. He finally chooses a move that defends b2, but to me, rook b1 is a bit of an ugly move. You've already played g4. Your king isn't going to castle on the short side. And now with rook b1, you take away a longside queenside, a long-term queenside castle as well from your king. Position right now. I think Jan should be happy with this.
He's already played the Jabava London, one of the most aggressive openings out there. Shout out to our friend James Canty. But yeah, rook to b1 is not an aggressive move, so it's not in the spirit of the position. I agree with you, Tanya. It smells wrong. It feels inconsistent at the very least. White's move rook to b1. Now white will never castle queenside. Therefore, the white king is kind of caught in two minds. Where is it going to end up? You've committed. You've opened up your own kingside already. Yeah, I don't like it at all for Firouzja, especially the time usage. It feels like Nepomniachtchi, yet again, just like the previous game, has won the opening battle. Nothing kind of substantial, of course. It's not winning for either side, but psychologically, Firouzja's on the back foot yet again. Nepomniachtchi with a time advantage, and I think that will only grow, Robert. Already no obvious moves for white.
Well, when we talk about psychology, we understand the temptation from Alireza to repeat an opening that he had great success with. You mentioned it, David, that in Tata Steel, a classical tournament, Alireza beat Jan, and it was quite a one-sided game. But players, they study from their losses, they learn from their mistakes, and I feel like Jan has learned this very well because his last move, g6, and it's not just trying to fianchetto his bishop, it's anticipating that white wants to throw a pawn forward, and black, while the rim may seem dim, then black knight will happily step to h5 to attack this bishop on f4. So Alireza now continues with development rather than pressing forward with his pawns. I feel like this isn't like continuity between his moves. He pushes a g-pawn and then slows down. Black attacks him on the queen side, so he has to move his rook and disallow himself from castling in that direction. I just don't like the way that his opening is gone, but maybe I'm overstating the case, Tanya. I just feel like Jan has played every single move naturally, and it's Alireza who's kind of waffling about.
That's exactly what it feels right? From the black side, Jan takes out the queen, then fianchettos the bishop, finds a nice post for that bishop. Now he's gone castle. Meanwhile, white's rook on b1 seems a little misplaced. The h3, g4 can become long-term targets. Maybe someday black will strike with h5, asking questions on the king side, an idea that you have to constantly watch out for. The black knight might jump to e4, posing more questions in the center. It just feels like this opening approach by Alireza has actually worked out really well for Jan. The point that you made earlier about them having played in Tata Steel, that has also a psychological effect because yes, your opponent's prepared. In this case, Jan has prepared this line, but actually at the back of his mind, he also knows that he had a bad result. So it's also a bit of a mind game by Alireza in this one. Maybe it hasn't turned out the way he had hoped for, David.
Yeah, it definitely didn't turn out the way he'd hoped for. He's now a minute down on the clock with white still uncastled. A bit of a mirror image. The previous game, black's king was stuck, unable to castle kingside because of a bishop piercing down a diagonal. Now it's the black queen stopping, using x-ray vision to stop the white king from castling. Tanya, you mentioned the kind of backdrop of the Tata Steel Masters where Alireza struck. Now they're about to play the candidates tournament in a couple of months. It feels like there's kind of this real hunger assert dominance before that potentially career-defining tournament in April. So queen to d3 by it's still a level position, still mutual chances, and Max still a long way off of this game.
Received a question mark for playing queen to a6, which to my eyes looked like a very natural move. So, it's difficult. Different line that may have required a little bit more of an adventurous spirit, but Jan Nepomniachtchi, he's playing very solidly here. And yes, white has a slight pull according to the evaluation bar, and also according to my eyes now, I like the presence of this bishop on g2. I think that if black trades queens, opening the c-file can backfire, allowing white's rooks to stare into black's position. So I think that white has control over more critical squares. And as David, you did make me proud. I don't see the pawn breaks anymore for black because you ever push your c-pawn, down goes your d-pawn. And knight to e8, that time, to my eyes, a nice move. Trading off pieces when you feel like you are the restricted player.
Makes a lot of sense. You want to ease out the pressure. And you pointed out that if black was to trade on d3, it opens up the c line. Yes, it doubles the white pawns, but those double pawns actually control a lot of central squares, which is why Yan is not blinking first. He's not immediately rushing with the queen trade, because actually the double pawns give white a lot of pluses in return. Trading off this strong bishop on e5 makes a lot of sense. Once it's gone, black can even start dreaming about a central break with e5, which is why Alireza doesn't take a decision, keeps the tension. He's advancing on the queen side. He's also hinting at a potential b5 coming up next, which will then target the base, the c6 pawn. And then that g2 bishop, which you highlighted just a move ago, becomes a real monster, Robert.
Wow, he's outplaying Jan at this stage. I thought that black played a very solid opening, but a few moves ago, this b6 move to potentially develop black's light square bishop, I could see it backfiring. A pawn chain is only as strong as its base pawn. And there's base pawn at this mini chain here between c6 and d5. It's easy to collapse this chain. A pawn back on b7 would probably be in black's favor, at least something you'd prefer. So e6 played to defend this pawn on d5, give it a second defender here. White can keep advancing. David, I think the space that Alireza is grabbing is useful, and it makes black's life very difficult.
The pawn structure is the skeleton of any position, and 5 moves ago, it was black who controlled all the pawn breaks. Black could have pushed a bunch of pawns all over the board on either flank. Suddenly it's white who has that luxury. White can push a4, white can push h4, f4, anything, e4 in the center a bit later. So it's definitely Firouzja who has the abundance of choice. I'm not sure you want choice in a rapid game. You want to trust your instincts and kind of play by instinct. There we go. G5 is one of those pawn moves. But yeah, it's very much turning in white's favor here. And I'm loving what Firouzja is doing. He's using that pattern recognition, b4, that's kind of reminiscent of those minority attacks we see in all these queen pawn openings. And yeah, it's very much pressure on Jan Nepomniachtchi to break out. Black is kind of entrenched in his first 2-3 ranks. He needs to trade pieces, but he doesn't want to do it on the opponent's terms. Tanya, are you in agreement? Is it white here who's making the magic happen, or is Nepomniachtchi still solid enough?
The Evalbar says that everything's fine for black, but it looks the kind of position that from a human perspective is so hard to play because you've got little space. You know, you said pawns are the skeleton of a position, pawns are the souls of a position, so soul, skeleton, everything is in white side right now. You've got the pawns pushing, you've got more space, you've got the breaks. Eventually the H pawn can move further ahead, H4, H5 ideas, opening up the H line. I'm just trying to think, how does black actually free himself? And now he takes on e5. I was about to suggest another pawn break. Maybe f6 could have been on the radar, but now with this last trade, Robert, that's off the table as well. There's no f6 anymore.
Definitely not, because white has a clamp in that direction. This knight on c3, it belongs on f6, but there's no way black will allow it to get there. It's a long journey. But as a fianchettoed pawn structure, we often teach people, you can attack it. You can develop your rook on its starting square by going after the fianchettoed pawn structure. So, Tanya, you sounded like you were in Mortal Kombat for a second. Your soul is mine. That's exactly what Alireza is aiming for right now. He's just going straight for Jan Nepomniachtchi's king, and a queen trade doesn't entirely help because white will have nothing to worry about. You can slide your own king up, connect your rooks, double your rooks, and go for a checkmate. So, David, this does not look pleasant in the least for Jan Nepomniachtchi, and that's why he's lashing out. Here are those pawn breaks that we've been discussing.
Finally, that tension is broken. It was like a staring contest, and finally it was Jan Nepomniachtchi who blinked first. As you mentioned, Tanya, the tension was just too much. The prospect of an attack against the black king was too much, and seeking counterplay, very wise choice there. Good tip for everyone at home. If you feel the momentum is going against you, if you feel that you're just kind of suffering passive, not doing anything, look to strike out if you can. And at least he's asking a question. How does Firouzja react? Does he push this b pawn forward? Does he trade off on a5? Does he just guard and kind of maintain the kind of structure by pushing a pawn to a3? Lots of choice. It's become a more strategic position now, but I'm looking again, skeleton of the position, white's light squared bishop, for now, probably more potential than its counterpart. And I still think that white has enough control here. More squares, more control. And wow, he's just going for it, Robert. He's still playing for checkmate. Who cares about the absence of queens?
He is. This is bad for his skeleton, for his pawn structure, but it's great for his rook if this pawn is captured, because the rook takes on b4, and then just like a fast car, zooms over to h4. Shout out to Tracy Chapman. That was an incredible performance at the Grammys. But here, this rook is about to land on h4, and that is going to be painful. This open h-file, this king doesn't have defenders around it. A lot of people think without queens on the board, there won't be a checkmate. That's not true in this case, so I like the restraint shown from Jan Nepomniachtchi. Bishop d7 is an excellent move, connecting his rooks, making certain that this rook on b1 will not easily enter along the h-file. It takes a few moves, and you don't really want your king in the center when the black rook is staring down an open file, and this rook, at least for now, it is delayed getting on over to the king side. Wow, what a move, though, by Alireza here. Tanya, do you like his decision to take the first pawn off the board?
It's really interesting. And you said Mortal Kombat. These two are playing like it's Mortal Kombat right now. A black can't recapture with his own rook because the b6 pawn is hanging, which actually might force black to take back with the pawn. But is that a happy decision? You leave behind so many squares. Not only can the rook enter to b7, which looks very deadly on the 7th rack, but eventually even the knight can go from a4 to c5 and really get a big hold in the position. You asked me if I like this, the decision of capturing on a5. The answer is yes, I do, because it poses big questions. If you can't take happily with the rook, you can't take happily with the pawn. What are you going to do here? It just looks like Jan has to choose lesser of the evils. But David, I see the eval bar does not budge. Is there another option here?
I guess if he's not scared about getting checkmated, which he should be, Jan Nepomniachtchi, then he could play a move like pawn to b5, guaranteeing that he can take on a5. There we go, it's on the board. He can take on a5 now with the rook, but this is the problem. The white rook has found this path over to the king side. It's racing over there, Robert, as you mentioned. It's not just a fast car. It's just a rocket right now. Those two rooks heading over, and wow, he's breaking his structure even more. Jan, he's taking desperate measures to try and cling on. I just want to mention as well, the clock situation for the first time in this match shows Alireza ahead. He's the one making things happen. What do you make of this, Robert? Just a shocking decision to take on h5.
It looks terrible, but looks can be deceiving. You are ruining your own pawn structure. You're leaving yourself with an isolated pawn. But perhaps the point is that black will play king g7 and then slide into a defensive posture with rook to h8, and the h7 pawn does get defended in this manner. I'm looking at this a5 pawn. It's going to fall, and when it does fall, black is suddenly going to have some chances at counterplay on the queen side. So king g7, a move that deserves an exclamation point. It's the only choice for black to stay in this game and be able to defend h7. But Tanya, just like in game one, are the tides suddenly turning in this game in Jan's favor a bit?
And now the time is level as well. It just feels like it's a roller coaster with these two. It's hard to say who's better because the moves are so combative that it just keeps changing the evaluation. But it feels like both of them are keeping it under control for now with really difficult to find moves. And Robert, I really like this knight retreat. You had long time ago pointed out that f6 square, a square that felt like it's impossible for white's knight to get to. But with this idea of knight e2, I can envision, and now to g3, at some point this knight is going to land with a check on h5 and get to that f6 square that felt like it was impossible to reach to. You're already pointing out a checkmate on the board with those arrows.
Oh, this looks scary. And I think that's why the evaluation went back toward the center. When white took on h5 with lost an important tempo, I wouldn't have seen this without watching the game unfold. But this rook takes on h5 was a little bit hasty. But David, despite the haste, despite the assessment being about level according to the engine, the players don't have that luxury. And Jan doesn't really have that much time.
I think it's deceptive here, the evaluation bar, because either white looks like he's going to deliver checkmate, or white's queenside will collapse and black's queenside pawns will just march down the board. It feels like it's nothing in between right now. It's just a pure race between kind of contrasting ideas here. And I mean, it's so tough to defend when you have no time on the clock. Jan takes this pawn, the most natural move in the position. He's just going to try and survive by any means necessary with the black king, and the black pawns will do the work for him later. But now pressure back on Firouzja. He has to back up his idea by essentially delivering checkmate. The white knight is coming, but the black king does have a escape route. Is going to just run for the hills, run forest run, just over as far away as possible. And tactical terms, with 2 minutes each on the clock, Tanya, it's so hard to call. It's a coin toss here.
It's a game for all three results, and I think draw is actually the least likely here. The knight has been planted on f6. The rook from b4 can slide over to h4, join the party on the king side. Just imagine if you take on h7 and land a rook there, the g pawn starts moving forward. You're already targeting the f7 with a pin. For now, even though black has an extra pawn, David, I'm picking white. I'd want to be white here. What about you guys? Who's pushing for the advantage here?
White is pushing for the advantage, and g6 is a huge push. Even in this position, it would win the game. So black needs to be super careful because a check on the 7th rank wouldn't just be a check. It would win the bishop behind it. The knight on f6 is the best piece on the board. That's a stallion. At the composure from Jan Nepomniachtchi. Lovely decision to retreat this bishop. I still think g6 is incredibly dangerous for black to deal with. You give away a pawn that seems like a bad decision, but you expose the black king on the 7th rank, and there are already tactics revolving around 2 pieces dropping off for a rook. David, what do you make of this? Is white really going to press with g6, or should he slow down a little bit and find a different improving route?
I think he'll be looking at g6, Robert. He's looking at just recapturing on h7 with his rook as well. The top players, they look at forcing moves first, the most direct path. If he isn't sure about the conclusion there, if he's not sure about what comes next, then he might take a timeout and start improving pieces. I'm not sure how to improve, though. White's light squared bishop, I guess, not participating in the action right now, but it does look like black will soon be ready to push pawns on the queen side. So I think Alireza will get itchy fingers here and do something dramatic, do something very direct. What that is, the more I look at g6, the more I think it's super tempting. But yeah, whatever he decides, he needs to do it quickly. 1 minute feels like a bit of time to calculate, but ultimately 1 minute will disappear so quick and he gets the rooks off the board. But now the black b pawn is only going to be a few squares away. Is it just a race now? There we go. Bertie the b pawn runs, but Gary the g pawn could also run in the near future. This is getting really, really dramatic.
And it's such a tightrope to walk on because this is the final rapid game. How much risk do you actually take in this one? Because there's no turning back from it. To me, now it looks like the b pawn is...
Hilarious sentence, but this is such a threat that even after knight takes bishop, I still think black can play b3 because knight takes knight, pawn to b2. You are not stopping a queen from landing on b1 with checkmate. So there may be a way out for white because the evaluation is in the center, but Jan right now, he has the time. He should be calculating. Can I win with pawn to b3? I think that knight d6, it barely allows white to escape. Perhaps there will be a repetition of moves because the black king doesn't have enough breathing room, so you can just keep checking it on the 7th and 8th rank. But this is a big moment for Jan Nepomniachtchi. Do you take back this knight? He says no, and the engine does not budge, but there's probably an only move here after a brilliant choice from Jan Nepomniachtchi. Perhaps the only move from him to keep the balance.
Oh, that last move is going to be like a cold shower for Firouzja. Suddenly he realizes he's got 2 moves to save himself, or at least 2 turns before that black b-pawn lands, and he finds the best move, the only move for white to save the game. And I saw a feature chat saying, how can this position be equal? It looks like black's about to deliver checkmate, make a new queen, but black's king cannot run. And this one is now just a draw. Wow, so much drama. 20 seconds for Firouzja. He doesn't risk it. He doesn't play on. We're about to see a repetition, but what a fight. You can see it on the cameras now. It is going to be a draw. Both players, though, just reeling from that burst, that flurry of excitement.
Just unbelievable. 2 draws, but such fighting chess, such a roller coaster ride, so topsy-turvy by both these players, and this last one allowing black's pawn to get to b2 and then finding a repetition. Both players, I think they've got reasons to be pleased with the chess that they're playing today. They're putting up quite the show, Robert, and we're in for an exciting Armageddon.
If the last 2 games are any indication, the Armageddon is going to be a brawl, a melee between these two because little has separated them. They're both going on the offensive. There has not been a winning advantage. Some small mistakes here and there, but the level of accuracy between these two, I'm amazed because what Alireza and Jan both do is they take their opponent into that deep, dark forest where you're going to be less accurate. You're going to blunder some games away. Neither side will back down to the other. This is such a great, I want to call it a rivalry between these two.
What a fantastic fight we've had in these two games. Just amazing chess start to finish, and the score is level, but the games have been anything but peaceful. And now we're in for an Armageddon. It's going to be about who gets the black pieces. David, how important would it be for the players to fight for the black pieces in this one?
At this point, it feels like they might as well take white. It's just been so chaotic, the games. It's always come down to the last few seconds. You might as well have the extra time. Yes, it's been 2 draws. Yes, on paper, it looks like having draw odds might give an advantage, but I actually think whoever gets white will be the favourite in this one. I think it's bucking the normal trend that we see during matches. No solidity here, just Mortal Kombat, as you said. Punch after punch landed by each. This Armageddon's going to be fun to watch no matter what.
When Alireza Firouzja and Jan Nepomniachtchi play, it's always fun, and that's what it's been today as well. 2 incredible fights. Robert, what are you expecting from this upcoming Armageddon?
They're going to throw everything at one another. Maybe those weapons on the wall will be used as well. I'm not sure. But Jan Nepomniachtchi, he better bring it, because Alireza, he is going toe-to-toe with him just like he can against pretty much any player on the planet. I'm stoked. Everyone at home should be stoked as well.
Cannot wait for the Armageddon to start to decide who will play against Denis Lazovic in the losers final to fight for a spot into the grand final. We've got a big Armageddon coming up between these two. We'll be back with the bids. Don't go anywhere.
Clear the lines of like a guy in a street corner. I'll make it easier for you.
What was that about?
I thought it would help.
How does that help?
No, visualization and stuff.
I'm not picking up the pieces.
Sometimes you don't need to do anything crazy to get better. You just need to reassess your chess. I'm Grandmaster Maurice Ashley, and I'm presenting Jeremy Silman's How to Reassess Your Chess now on Chessable. So go to chessable.com/yourchess and start reassessing your chess today.
Welcome to the most. More time on the clock, but in a draw secures black the match win. Lowest bid gets to choose their color. Let the arm.
And just a few moments from now, we will have the players getting ready to play their Armageddon. And the bids are in. It is Alireza Firouzja who wins the bid with 6 minutes and 55 seconds. He starts with the black pieces. Jan Nepomniachtchi will start with the base time of 10 minutes and gets the white pieces, which means he has to win. Must win for Jan. No more draws in a match where we've had 2 draws so far. It's going to be about flagging. It's going to be about the mouse speed. It's going to be about who gets their opponent to start thinking first. David, are we expecting more opening surprises in this one?
Well, that seems to be the recurring pattern. 2 games so far in this match, 2 opening surprises, and it's been Firouzja both times on the back foot early. So Jan needs to hope it's third time lucky that he can launch another surprise and catch Firouzja off guard, especially with the Armageddon clock situation. There we see him on the camera. Firouzja, yeah, he's just trying to get in the zone. He knows he will need to be quicker, at least in the early phases, Robert.
He will indeed, and I'm actually a bit surprised by the bids that we saw. I'm not sure if Alireza has been watching and noting what Jan Nepomniachtchi's bid in previous days, but I think Jan's bids have tended to be higher. He likes the white pieces in Armageddon, so for Firouzja to start with under 7 minutes on the clock, that's quite a low bid. I think he could have successfully bid higher, not just because that's what it would have been in this case, but just based on Jan's bidding history.
He just has incredible faith and belief in his mouse skills, Alireza Firouzja, and you can't really blame him for that. He is the bullet beast. He is a speed chess specialist. Off we go. It starts with 1e4. It's another Berlin. Are we going to see another b4 sacrifice? Not this time, David.
Not this time. Again, it's the Berlin, but it's the anti-Berlin with no piece trades, no kind of early clarification of the center. White also keeping his Spanish bishop alive, so still one of the main positions, and a bit of a thing there from Firouzja before deciding to try and blow open the center, trying to seek early clarification here, fixing the pawn structure at least. Quicker here, much more natural at least for Firouzja compared to the earlier games we saw.
Apparently we just saw, bishop takes f2 check. Trusting the other or completely an analysis board so everyone can understand turns in a row that hits the king and the bishop. The only way to block a check and protect the bishop would be knight to d4, but then black can take it in numerous ways, including with the knight, because you can't even take back without losing your queen. So this was a tremendous opportunity for Alireza Firouzja. It would have been pretty much game his, winning a pawn, opening up the white king. But both players missed it 2 turns in a row, and instead we're back to a pretty normal looking position. So Tanya, I think we can breathe once more. The players, they don't even know that they missed it. We're back in more standard territory.
I am gobsmacked, Robert. I cannot believe what just happened. But it's insane how much of this we see, where at the top level, they just don't expect a blunder early on. They just seem to trust their opponent sometimes too much. And the bishop takes pawn, a huge missed opportunity. Unbelievable stuff. I mean, it would have just been close to an Alireza win right out of the opening with extremely high stakes there, David.
He could have won in 10, 15 moves as black. That's a real rarity. It knocked down their accuracy. We see below the boards there, both were down in the mid-70s. That's how dramatic it was. But that's what we call mutual blindness. You trust the opponent. You nearly never see a 2800 player blunder in one move, especially with white early in the opening. And ultimately, they're kind of using patterns that they're familiar with. But it was Nepomniachtchi to mix up his move order, and Alireza, who didn't have the alertness to punish, I think it's just that Armageddon. They're both so in the mindset of getting the moves down on the board as quickly as possible that they didn't pause to think. So understandable. It's very difficult when you're in the heat of the moment. Easy for us without the pressure of the clocks. But Alireza, if he loses now, if he goes back and checks this game, he will be kicking himself. So it's good for both players that neither of them kind of spotted it and have realised. Otherwise, we would have seen a far bigger reaction, Robert. Ultimately, it looks like a very balanced middle game instead.
I think that Alireza could still be happy with the position he's obtained because he has the healthier pawn structure, no double pawns on the F-file. And for Black, all your pieces are active, protecting one another. And with this latest move, you're forcing back White's most active piece, this knight that was out on c4. So I really am enjoying the way that Alireza is playing this game. The knight did step back to e3 here, but Black has claimed a lot of space, a healthier pawn structure. And wow, that is a huge decision, Tanya, to isolate your pawns on the queen side. I think he's just going for activity.
I'm loving what Alireza is doing. He might have missed bishop takes pawn earlier on with a huge advantage, but this also looks like a really happy outcome out of Berlin. That knight is not stopping at e5. It's going to jump into d3. It's going at the right time. It's going to find a post on d3 once we see some trades on the d file. And then will White be forced to capture that knight once it lands on d3? Give a really strong passer with the e pawn capturing back on that square. It's going to be big questions for Yan to answer. I'm still thinking about that big miss that happened. And I think it's really good news that both of them did not realize that. They didn't see what they missed. It's better that they check it after the game because then it can really, really throw you off. Still liking Black's position. I think the trades do favor Black. Whatever White plays, Black can take on d1 now, double up with that rook on d8 and throw that knight onto d3 eventually.
We're seeing all of that unfold now, Tanya. That is a monster square. The Black Knight is going to evolve like a Pokemon into a more magnificent beast right now. It's going to become a real octopus with tentacles all over the board. That Black Knight, it cannot be tolerated on d3. I agree. It will be whipped off, exchanged once it gets there. But yeah, with the draw up his sleeve for Ruja, he's also eaten into the time advantage. Now under 2 minutes, the difference between them. I think he's becoming more and more of a favourite every single move. He's done nothing wrong at all, Robert. He's kind of ruined his own pawn structure on occasion throughout the 3 games, but so energetic for Ruja's play.
Energetic is a great word to describe it. And after knight d3, if White does take this knight, in comes a passed pawn for Black with a rook behind it. So this just looks deeply unpleasant for the A file, but it can't get involved on the first rank because this bishop on c1 isn't getting out. And Jan, he's in for a big think here. There's no way you like your position. Knight d3 also has threats of knight takes f2. There will be tactics on that square once again. So for both of these players who don't know that there was a huge blunder out of the opening, it's all Alireza Firouzja at this point. Tanya does anything to coordinate.
Bishop on c1, if it was on the h2 b8 diagonal, if it was developed already, it would be a position that's totally playable for White. But right now, with this bishop stuck behind his own knight, not having the activity, Black's knight has landed with a punch on d3, cannot be allowed to stay alive at that point. And Alireza pauses. I would be so tempted to just pick it up with that e4 pawn, create a passer, but position, David. He goes with
Surprise me. It's an energetic move. He's trying to play with pieces rather than pawns, but just kind of setting up this protected passed pawn forever, pretty much. That would have tied down all of White's forces. I understand the question mark attached to that move. I think it was not the most natural option, and I think actually the kind of more instinctive move was the better one here. However, look at this. Black now has a strong move. Black can just line up on the d-file, conquer the d-file. And again, the problem piece, the problem child of White's position is that bishop. That's such a sad block of wood on c1. So yeah, still Black in the driver's seat, but I agree, Tanya. I think it could have been even more clinical there, even more emphatic his advantage if he had taken with the pawn. And Nepomniachtchi's still suffering here with White now. Queen to d7, Robert.
David, if you ever called me a block of wood, I think I would just cry. That felt like super insulting, but in the nicest way possible. It's like when the best person you know tries to hurt someone else's feelings. Just that kind of pleasant one is a miserable check on the first rank. That looks really scary. He is trading off white's best of this f5 pawn and taking with the rook. If this were not I would agree with it, because pawn takes d3 had a clear path forward. So from that perspective, Tanya, I think we could forgive him as his position remains marvelous.
Especially with the way it's proceeded after that. This move, knight d5, lining up the queen and the rook. There are checkmating ideas that will appear once. The bishop might even fall back to c7. You can line up the queen and the bishop on that diagonal, try and target the h2 square. You could think about a rook d1, back rank ideas coming with this knight trade being offered, with the f5 pawn about to fall. It just looks like it's big problems here for Jan to handle and to solve, and the time advantage. The advantage on the clock has completely disappeared, David.
It has evaporated. Suddenly, Firouzja's moves are easier. I mean, right now, this is a trick, I guess. I was going to say black can just take the white f-pawn, but black's moves are instinctive, quick. He's attacking. Remember that last game we talked about attacking moves being quicker than finding these really difficult defenses. But yeah, it's very much all about black, and only really the clock and his nerves can trip him up here. Jan is trying to complicate the issue, but look at it on the camera, shaking his head in Nepomniachtchi. He's relied on this trick. Bishop takes h6. That was untouchable because there would have been a knight fork winning the black queen. But yet again, the black queen steps back. Robert, you mentioned it, stabilizing, just so calm his moves. He knows in the back of his mind it is Armageddon. You can see the experience from Firouzja here. And he's just bullying Nepomniachtchi at this point. The black f-pawn is going to be a battering ram in the near future. Still looks phenomenal for black. Still doing everything right.
And if white's best options are to trade off pieces and get into a worse position there, that still doesn't help. Jan knows he needs to win. So even if the engine goes in completely in black's favor, Jan has to go for lines that scare Alireza. And with the clock evening up, why should Alireza be scared? He doesn't have a weak king. In fact, he's the one with the attack. This bishop, as Tanya mentioned, can slide back to c7 at any moment, including right now. Bishop on g5, you can even boot that one away with pawn to f6. I'm not sure it's necessary. I'm not seeing plans for white, and that's the biggest hurdle for Jan Nepomniachtchi. It's not even the evaluation bar. It's that he just doesn't have a plan.
I think the one thing that perhaps Jan is relying on, well, right now he's got to move the bishop, but maybe lining up the rook and the queen, trying to target the e4 pawn. And now that idea has gone out of the window, at least for now. A trade being offered, which is captured by the knight. He takes it back. And now I feel like the position's eased out a little. Wow. Alireza, he's playing the match situation, the Armageddon situation, and not the board. That's what's clear to me, David.
Yeah, certainly. He would not have traded off all of those pieces so quickly, so confidently, if he wasn't sure that he would secure a draw here as black. And after all, I think he's well within his rights to play like this. Black's rook is supremely strong, the black queen nicely centralized. As long as you take care of the black king, I think you can safely just about take a pawn on b4 here, not worry about the rook infiltrating, the white rook there. Yeah, I think he's got the draw up his sleeve. He should be able to hold. But playing for a draw is a bit of a negative mindset, so he needs to be careful that he doesn't affect too many more of his decisions. In the meantime, Robert, though, he's still doing everything right. He's tied down the white pieces, black's queen, black's rook, better than their counterparts.
And look at this last move, queen to g3, not even allowing the white king to step closer. If king h1 is your move, it's because he can't do anything else. So watch out. The one thing I wouldn't want if I am Alireza is to see a queen land on h5, because if I can imagine a rook also landing on a square like a8, these arrows, they don't make sense because it's not going to happen. But if these pieces can line up in this manner, that would be a checkmate. So rook a1 next is Nepo's idea. And he didn't want queen takes e3 to be check, forcing the queens off the board. So actually quite a good last move, king to h1. And if I'm Alireza, I don't want to burn too much clock. I want to find the accurate reply. But now hitting about 2 minutes, ooh, a g6 play. That means there are going to be checks on both of these last two ranks. Tanya, I don't know if I'm as confident as I was before in Alireza's chances to hold this and move on.
Some really practical decisions were taken by Alireza, maybe not objectively the best ones in a better position, trading off pieces, getting a queen rook versus queen rook. But now it's still game on. He's got about a minute deficit to Jan's time. There's no increment. He's under 2 minutes right now. The black king potentially could be on, say, watch out, f6 was threatened, forcing Firouzja to make his queen a bit inactive. I think Alireza wanted to trade off with rook d1, get as many pieces off the board as possible. Jan very smartly there stops any further trade, but it does come at the cost of a pawn. But David, there's a trap.
There is a trap. If black's rook takes the pawn on e3, suddenly it walks into a double attack. It's an undefended square. Queen a7 check would win that rook. So Firouzja shaking his head there. The nerves are kicking in now. He's down to the 1.5 minute mark. And the words of Magnus Carlsen are ringing in my mind. He has gone on record as saying Jan is one of the best players in the world when it's just heavy pieces, when it's just the major pieces, rooks and queens, because he's so alert to these traps, these double attacks, as we saw there. Pawn to g5 is not a happy move, creating some more luft, some more air for the black king, but also weakening some squares. And Jan, he's going to up the pace now. He has to hustle on the clock. And Firouzja is far, far from safe. Look at this, more threats, Robert. Every move from Jan, just creating a threat. But rook d1, always trading queens. This is a godsend for black.
Trading off these pieces is not just helpful, it actually wins a pawn by force. If you take on d1, the black queen can slide right back to d6 with check against the white king that steps forward, and down goes this b4 pawn. And with all the trades happening, it means we're getting closer to a draw from an objective standpoint, but I have one eye on the clock. 1 minute, 6 seconds for a bullet beast like Firouzja, that's an eternity. But Jan, he's not too shabby himself in scrambles. He will try to win on time.
I think at some point we've got to have both our eyes on the clock because he's touching a minute mark. And how many moves do you think with 60 seconds he's picked up, he's grabbed that pawn? Jan Abramnish is going to try to flag Alireza. There are no doubts about that. With a minute on the clock, how many moves can you actually make with the mouse, David?
If you're the top guys and you know how to pre-move, you can make 100 moves with a minute on the clock. But with the nerves as an added ingredient, I'm not so sure. But look what he's doing, Robert. He's protected everything. Now he can just move with the king. The black queen doesn't even need to do too much anymore. Just plant her on d5. Surely this is safe now for Firouzja.
The queen protects everything, which means that the only quote-unquote idea that white will have is to give checks. And he goes h4. He wants to give a sneaky check with a mate idea, but now that this pawn is captured and the queen centralizes, it's actually objectively winning at this stage for black, but a draw is equivalent to a win. So as long as Alireza, he keeps the pace that he has, this is not a blunder. I'm actually removing that right now. I can do that. This is it's a good move, because if you could force the draw, you win the match.
Jan, Tanya, he's just checking. He's just hoping now, but 36, 37 seconds. Alireza is forcing the queens off, otherwise it's checkmate. Is this the end of Jan's tournament?
He's giving up, and now queen f5 trades the queens, and this is all over. The c-pawn will push. It will be faster, and Jan Nepomniachtchi on the camera and on the board gives up. It is the end of the road for Jan. Jan is eliminated. Alireza Firouzja makes it through to fight against Denis Lazovic in the losers final. And what a match this has been, Robert.
It was a great match. 3 draws were the results, but the games, they had so much life to them. There are so many people who think, a draw, that means that it wasn't an exciting match. This was a huge clash between 2 of the hungriest players on the planet. Only one could make it through. It's Alireza Firouzja, who Magnus Carlsen said he saw as the favorite. He moves on, and that means he plays a teenager next.
Credit to Magnus for that. Slight favorite, and it was one.
Firouzja's energetic play. He was never backing down. Yes, he took kind of pragmatic decisions towards the end, but he always had it under control. It feels like these last 12 months, 24 months, it's been a real changing of the guard. I'm sad that a player of my generation, Jan Nepomniachtchi, is out of the tournament. Now it's the turn of the youngsters, but of course, that big boss still lurking in the distance on Wednesday, Magnus Carlsen. But credit to Firouzja. We're going to see him go again, and we're going to see him take on a fellow youngster this time, Denis Lazovic.
It is the big losers final, which is coming up between Denis Lazovic and Alireza Firouzja. It was such a close match, right? With those two draws and then fighting, it turned out to be really critical for Alireza to get black in this game, because there were those moments where he could make practical decisions even though they weren't objectively.
Well, I think it's objectively the best decision. Engine says you're wrong. But I think Alireza played a more or less perfect game in an Armageddon situation.
It really was, and it came down to a big battle in the Rapid, in the Armageddon. David, if you had to highlight one moment from this match, which one would it be?
So many highlights. I'm just going to talk purely about the Armageddon, though. And I just wanted to talk about the moment where, for Firouzja, he pretty much banked it. And here we see the game review in the Opera browser. I just wanted to highlight knight to d3. We talked about this piece just being a beast. Look at the tentacles here out. Just kind of hitting everything. The f2 square, the bishop on c1, it had to be eliminated. And yes, rook takes d3, a controversial decision, but Firouzja, over the next few turns, consolidated. The tip for everyone at home, avoid tactics if you know you're already in control, especially if you're happy with a peaceful result. And knight to g4, it would be easy for someone to panic here, easy to go wrong, especially against mighty. The board has just changed up. But the next few moves, the bishops disappeared, the knights disappeared, and he guided it towards safety. So this was a previous checkmate from Firouzja. He's just been the man. He's been so on form this tournament so far.
And this was one of the most beautiful checkmates that we saw in the Champions Chess Tour, sacrificing that bishop on g2, promoting to h1. So many great games by all these players, but for Jan Nepomniachtchi, the road does come to and undoubtedly we will see him back in the Champions Chess Tour. For Alireza, the fight does continue, and he did show his mettle in that Armageddon. He missed that big opportunity out of the opening, Robert, but never let it go out of his control.
It's because the players, they don't have the engine off to the side, alerting them, hey, you missed something here, find it next time. So Alireza, he is going to be annoyed as he reviews the game. We see all these players immediately. Performance from Alireza Firouzja, and hats off to Jan Nepomniachtchi, because it takes two players to showcase their talents and their fighting spirit. So we had a really fantastic match, and for Alireza, his day is not done.
And our day is not done, as we've got a big matchup coming up for that spot to the grand final of the Chessable Masters. We will be back as the youngsters take on each other. Alireza Firouzja fighting against the 17-year-old Denis Lazovic. Get your coffee, get your tea, get whatever you want, and come right back. We'll be back in just a few.
was 5, my father taught me the game, and soon thereafter took me to the local chess club. I can't really remember my life without chess. I feel like it's always been there. I met my wife to win. I'm not that competitive. I love how the pieces move. I love the game. I love how everything around me becomes still. When I'm behind the chessboard, time doesn't flow the same way until the clock runs out. In the spring of 2021, time seemed to have run out. I was diagnosed with Hodgkin's disease, which is a form of cancer. I was 35, and suddenly my life changed. It was a strange time, and chess didn't seem to matter at all. But I was optimistic. I trusted the treatment plan and the doctors that were helping me, and I felt it was in their hands now. The chemotherapy, radiation, at the worst I could barely walk around the block. That it really puts things in perspective. If I have a bad position now, yeah, I mean, it's no big time when I was not well. I think it gives you kind of different perspective on life, on everything actually. So it was definitely not only negative. It takes a long time to recover, but chess players are anything if not patient. It was crazy because 1 month before the tournament in Vegas, I still had my radiation therapy finished. So it was way too early actually to start playing, but I wanted to desperately be at that tournament. I barely prepared for the games because I was just too tired. I only played the games. I had dinner, went back to my room, slept most of the time. I had put that tournament as a goal. Best tournament I ever played. Then at the end of the year, after 16 failed attempts, I became the feeling of I'm back. All those failures, all those setbacks, they never seem to matter now. What is important is that I have a lot of chess ahead of me. I always wait for the moment when I wake up and I realize that today I don't really feel like looking at chess, but it just never happens. My name is Erwin Lamy, and I'm a Dutch grandmaster.
He's down a piece.
Give me a new one, please.
Ooh, he's losing.
Oh, the bar's going up. This is an out.
Cecil has done it.
He's going in for the.
Like rook takes pawn.
Checkmate. Second. Get in.
The players are getting ready. We are ready as well because it's high stakes matches in the next one as Alireza Firouzja fights against the 17-year-old Denis Lazovic, who's been creating waves this entire Chessable Masters. And David, I'm going to throw my first question to you. Put yourself in Denis's shoes right now. You've just watched the action that's unfolded between Alireza and Jan Nepomniachtchi. What are you taking away from it, and what's your strategy going into this one?
I wish I were Denis Lazovic, but if I were him, if I was still in the Chessable Masters at this late stage, I would actually be taking the positives. Jan and Firouzja, they were punching each other, they were knocking each other down, they were tiring each other out. So Denis, being able to relax and sit back, knowing he would face the winner, he should be reveling in the fact that something, at least some energy would have been drained from them. Of course, it's not going to be easy if Firouzja can maintain that level. Denis will still start as an underdog, but he's done so well so far. And if he can maintain that momentum he had yesterday against one game victory, then he this next match with
On the line, not just his but not before throwing in one of his own punches in there. Robert getting that big historical win yesterday, putting up a massive fight. What are you expecting when he takes on Alireza?
Well, you were asking, if we're ready, if the audience is ready. Denis Lazovic was born ready. He is an absolute fighter. He does not lose very often. That is probably his biggest calling card. He's not trying to play tactical affairs. He just plays solid, fundamental chess. He's maybe the Tim Duncan of chess, if you will. Hasn't hit the highest heights yet, but he's just 17 years old. It's his third Division I appearance, Tanya. His rating over the board, not nearly as high as it is online, and he's also proven himself at so many speed chess events. So Alireza Firouzja, he may be the high-rated player, he may have more accolades, but he is taking Denis Lazovic very seriously.
You said Denis doesn't lose that up by telling every planes, counting the placements and the right through Division 1. Denis Lazovic only has lost to David Anton and Magnus Carlsen. That's just two players who managed to get the dub in against this 17-year-old phenom. He takes in Alireza Firouzja. Alireza, who has been in the elimination bracket since day one, since his loss to Fedosev, has also been really impressive. But look at that, Robert. Some impressive performances by Denis over the board.
Denis Lazovic, he is underrated and he's certainly dangerous. Look at these performances. All of them so much better on paper than his rating. It's because he is underrated, but somebody who does not rate him lowly, someone who takes him seriously, is Alireza Firouzja, because Alireza, he was the shining star. He had a meteoric rise. He knows that some of these other players can do what he did in the past. So Alireza, he just beat Jan Nepomniachtchi. Now is not the time to stop giving it your all.
Hey, it's the Italian opening, so no more Berlins. Breathe a sigh of relief, everyone. Instead, the Italian, the slow Gioco piano, promises a lot of maneuvering. Alireza here, he's going for a long game, it feels like, where he's hoping to catch Denis a bit later on. And this one, Tanya, so many different move orders, so many different setups for both sides. Are you surprised by this choice from Alireza?
It's really one of those openings which seem to say that Alireza is channeling his inner, anti-young player chess. You're out of any theoretical knowledge. We've been singing praises about Dennis's opening, his theoretical ideas. So getting this kind of a structure where one move here and there, you could put in an a4, you could take out your knight, you could go short castle, you could delay your castling. At any moment, we could see the a pawn falling ahead, the bishop falling backwards to b3. So all these ideas give rise to these structured line. So I think it's a good approach.
I was smiling because every bishop could retreat, and it immediately did. For Alireza, he has not casted a knight hop, and in fact, there it is. He took away black's access. Means he can delay his short. Should you play this move?
I'm sitting here smiling. He's employing the treatment of my childhood. I think up until I to see him dig deep into the. I used to get a lot of criticism for playing like this from the grand old men of British chess. They were saying, this is just lazy. You're not even learning anything. You're just moving pieces around. But there's so much poison, as you highlighted there, Robert. And I'm hoping Dennis doesn't play moves like pawn to h6, because that would be like a red rag to a bull. White's g-pawn would throw itself forward, and we'd see a blitz attack on the black king. So, to answer your question, d5 is probably a good move. From my experience, at least, it's what black should be doing. Bishop to e6 would be another potential way of meeting this setup, just to trade off pieces, making white's potential attack a little less dangerous. But Dennis, certainly, Tanya, the one to start burning time on the clock early, caught by surprise.
Early on, and that's also one of the advantages of taking this setup that we've been discussing, because there is no concrete theory. You've got these plans, these ideas, but the move orders keep switching up, and with a 10-minute, 2-second increment time control, it can become quite tricky to deal with it. All these moves that you're discussing, bishop to e6, d5, I agree with you, David. h6 is asking for trouble, creating a hook on the king side, really inviting the pawn ram on the g file. It looks extremely dangerous. We've been talking about Dennis's style, right? He prefers to keep things under control. He likes that solid approach. Do you think that's perhaps why he doesn't choose the move d5 and goes for the more developing solid bishop e6, Robert?
Definitely. And he acknowledges that he will receive double pawns if white takes, but an open file. Anytime you have double pawns, you gain some access for your rook. So it was a big moment. d5 would have taken us into a more tactical waters. This pawn chain makes sure the e5 pawn is safe. Whenever black pushes d5, you're creating pawn tension. That's good to activate some of your pieces, but you may have a vulnerable pawn on e5 later. And wow, I like this retreat from Alireza. And the reason I like it is because I don't know what he's aiming for. He doesn't want to trade pieces. Keeping more of them on the board means that there are more options. But David, you like to say this. In rapid chess, you often don't want to have too many options, because then you burn the clock and you may spend too much time trying to figure out a way forward.
That's right. Often you just want easy, natural, forced moves, for better or worse. At least you get them down on the board. It helps you to play a bit quicker. But here the players both have a bunch of time left. And finally, Dennis does break with d5. I think he's chosen a good moment for it. We were talking about playing this pawn break one move earlier, but now at least he's forced the white light squared bishop a bit more passive. And Alireza pretty much is at a fork in the road right now. He either takes that pawn on d5, from my experience, that it can backfire. Black has a bit more space in the center, but the black e5 pawn can be a bit of a target. Or you continue being provocative by playing a move like queen to e2. You essentially say, yes, you can take on e4, but the queen stay on the board. And slowly I'm going to kind of slither around and try to attack your king, the black king. Moves like bishop to g5 in the air after that, knight to g5 in the air. Okay, he goes for the former option of trading pawns. Maybe slightly less ambitious, but also a lot safer. And now I'm expecting Dennis to recapture I'm not sure with which piece, actually. I was going to say originally the knight, but also taking with the queen would be perfectly viable. And effectively, at least, black is doing fine. Black has a target. We talk about backward pawns. The d3 pawn, Tanya, reminiscent of an earlier game with a weakness for the white side.
And that just invites doubling up on the D line, long-term weakness there. I am surprised with this trade on D5, and Dennis chooses a third option, not with the knight, with the queen, but brings on his bishop, which also a really nice idea. You place it on a good square. You're provoking white to go C4 to try to push that bishop out, but that creates so many central weaknesses like D4, the square that you're highlighting. And as long as the bishop is on d5, you always have to watch out for a trade on f3 or a potential e4 at the right time. Black can always step up with the queen to d7, double up on the d file, start putting pressure on the d line. To me, Robert, it looks like Dennis should be very pleased with the opening outcome.
But as someone who has played this position from the black side many times, including in over-the-board classical chess, I've lost some pretty hurtful games, I'm going to say. It looks like everything's under control. You start feeling confident. Yeah, I'm equalizing. This is great. But white has this very natural plan of bringing a knight to f5, and there are all sorts of sacrifices in the air on g7, a bishop coming out to g5. So you can't just think that, yeah, the engine probably approves my play. That's it. What is black's actual plan? That is the hard part about positions like this. White, on the other hand, has simple moves. Queen e2, a bishop g5, knight f5. The bishop to c5 and back to f8. Understand you want to go after my king. Let's be safe here, but that does take time. It allows a rook coming to e1 later. So I actually for black to play. So David, I'm not continues to spend time getting 5 minutes while Alireza has more than 8.
For the fans of Denis Lazovic. Then again, he did this segment of each game. Just wow, his last move. With the pawns, but it is temporarily black's position looks a bit loose. His bishop, and yes, knights might disappear. Look really menacing. The c7 pawn is a big target tactically in the near future. The h7 pawn a big target. Robert, does this feel like he's just playing a bit too safe? He's trying to force the issue when he didn't need to panic this early.
I think at first glance it does appear that way, particularly that c7 pawn is loose in the event of a queen trade. I think Dennis should continue trading. Here I would play bishop c4. I would be concerned that white is about to play queen d3, rook to d1, one of the rooks, I'm not sure which, and take control of some of the central files. He actually allows queen d3 because he was so worried about this loose pawn on c7 that he brings his bishop to its defense. But I'm starting to like Alireza's position. The bishop on g3, it's attacking and defending. The bishop on c2, it goes after the black king. For some reason, I like white's position, but then I'm thinking about Tanya. Black has done nothing wrong and no longer seems to have some huge weaknesses.
Huge weaknesses? I don't see a single weakness on the board for black currently. I agree with your point that the bishop on g3 was eyeing the c7 pawn, which is why I really like this quick move that Dennis played. He improves that bishop position to b6, making sure that pawn stays defended whenever there's a potential queen trade. So he's kind of looking ahead, preempting that queen trade at some point. So the pawns are defended. I like that bishop on d5. Yes, I agree that it feels that white's pieces might be more active right now, that bishop on c2 may line up with the queen, attacking h7. But it doesn't feel like there are any threats that are going to be too difficult for black to actually handle in the position. As long as this bishop stays on d5, I'm expecting the queens to be traded off. I think black's still doing fine here, David.
I think I was just kind of reeling from the shock of pawn to e4. It felt like Dennis didn't even want to try to be better with the black, but ultimately a draw would be a decent result for him. And you're right, if Alireza can't find anything in the next 2 or 3 moves, then this position could well just fizzle out. So that's why the top players, they are so kind of sensitive to the key moments in games when trends might be about to turn. Alireza invests his time here and now. And yeah, if he can't whip up an attack, I think Robert's queen to d3 will be met by bishop e4. Then, yeah, maybe it's just level. Maybe Dennis has got this all under control. I tend to trust him. He's Mr. Invincible. He's so hard to beat. He always seems to have a defensive answer, at least. But Alireza, this is a key moment. Rook to e1, offering some trades. I like this move. He's controlling some squares. Now queen to d3, a much bigger threat. And, wow, Robert trying to provoke black into taking on f3 right now.
I think that would be a mistake from Dennis's perspective in terms of giving white the bishop pair on an open board, but I'm not really sure he has a huge choice because rook d1, that could win a piece on the next turn as the bishop gets pinned, and there are ways to pile up pressure on the pinned bishop. So for Dennis, that would mean moving the queen out of the file, and rook d1 still will be available to white in the near future, or taking this, accepting that white will have control of some key squares, particularly the light squares, but the pawn structure is shattered. So he doesn't take. I think that Dennis's style is to keep the status quo. He wants symmetry. And for Alireza, once again, he needs to prove that he can have more than just an attractive looking position. He needs to get something a little more. And Tanya, I don't immediately see it. All of the key squares in the position, black has under control.
I agree with you. Queen f6, I really like it. He delays taking on f3. Right now, white doesn't have the option to immediately go with rook to d1 because there is a threat. Two pieces attacking f3. Only one pawn is defending on f3. So white still needs to spend a move. Are you going to retreat with the knight? That doesn't look very pleasant either. I don't really see a good square for the knight. You can go queen e2, and then black will have the decision to either line up, be the first to bring his rook to d8. But you have to watch out. A move like rook d8 could actually maybe run into bishop h4. There are tactics everywhere. Bishop takes f3, and it's going to be a complete mess. I'm not sure who that works out for, but I like this approach. Keep your bishop back. Keep that bishop on d5 alive. And Robert, you mentioned styles here. David, I want to ask you this question, that for these two players fighting this big match against each other, is it fair to say this is an absolute clash of styles?
Definitely. And I didn't expect this type of position purely because of that style aspect, Tanya. I thought Alireza would play something really dynamic, really testing, forcing Dennis to kind of walk a tightrope. But this is a bit more strategic. Alireza, more a fiery player. Denis Lazovic, of course, rock solid, as we've mentioned. So Dennis, it feels like he's kind of asserting his type of position on Alireza right now. Alireza, however, queen to e2, still asking some questions. Now there's a big threat. Queen to d3, double attack, and finally forces the first imbalance. I think you called it, Tanya. It's this clash of styles. It's kind of just testing the waters here. And it is a short match, so it will be about who's able to navigate this coming position better. Alireza keeps the queens on, Robert. And bishop pair, but fractured structure. How big do you think white's advantage is, if any at all?
I like this bishop on c2. It's in red because it can be dangerous, but of course these pawns are in red because they're bad, double and isolate. Just hard to team up on. And I just want to note their accuracy. These players are playing very precise chess, and for Alireza, yeah, he's known for his aggression, his tactical style, but when the position liquidates, simplifies, he can play great end games. And what Alireza does, and Fabiano Caruana has spoken about this on his podcast, the C-Squared podcast, and many others have too, is that Alireza's play is less accurate. I'm going to put that in air quotes, but it's because he brings his opponent's accuracy down too. And this is why we are all saying that Denis Lazovic is getting a position in his style. Both of the players super accurate to this point. No mistakes whatsoever. No brilliancies. No blunders, nothing. That is an empty scorecard beneath the board. It's because every move, it keeps the position exactly where it was, slightly, ever so slightly better for black initially, and now for white. Tanya, I mean, no budging between these two. Do you believe that one side can gain the upper hand as we see the time? Now both players under 4 minutes.
Just slightly for white. And it comes down to this bishop pair and long term. Yes, the double pawns do compensate black for that bishop pair, for not having that extra bishop. But look at that last move, always eyeing that knight on c6. You're threatening to pick up a pawn if black isn't careful. There could be ideas of taking on c6. The a6 pawn might fall if your queen is moves away from f6. The next move that we might be even seeing is the queen stepping up to the center of the board. Queen to e4 comes to mind, setting up tricks not only against the c6 knight, but ideas like bishop h4, in the air. To me, it just feels like black will have to watch out for these bishops creating a bit of havoc around the black king now that it's placed on a dark square, lining up skewers on the board. Meanwhile, it's not so easy, David, for black to continue finding ways to maybe trade pieces. I don't see how you can do that. To try to create attack, to try to create a direct threat, I don't see how to do that. What do you think? Do you think that black can still find a way to trade some pieces? Because that will really help the cause.
He would love that right now, Denis Lazovic, if he could somehow neutralize white's bishop pair, trade off the queens. But yeah, it's just so difficult to find moves. And rook to d7, given a question mark, I actually think it's a fine move. He's got a clear idea, at least. Rook to e7 would be next if given the opportunity to try and trade off rooks, queens. I noticed there are actually some tactics in the air there, so you have to be slightly careful. But Denis, yeah, I don't envy his clock situation as well, and I don't envy how kind of non-obvious his moves are. So all of these small things, plus my inherent bias for the bishop pair, is a chance to strike. But still, of course, hard work to be done. Calling card. So, Robert, question.
It's a question. It says better for white. I think it's because the back rank could. That is the auto response, and in fact, should have thrown in bishop takes c6 first, dragging the queen away, and only then bringing the queen to the e8 square, because the black king would have been in some danger. But queen 8, so natural, and even after rook e7, this is why I don't want to fault Alireza too much. Once you trade rooks on e7, the queens don't even necessarily have to come off. If black takes back, the white queen can start going after some pawns on this side of the board. So be very careful with what trades you orchestrate. If you're Denis Lazovic, he kind of has to, as bishop e5 in the near future, maybe after taking this knight on c6. Tanya, this looks scary for Denis all of a sudden.
It does, and I don't even believe black will have the option, Robert, to offer that queen trade. There might be tactics in that position that will make it really difficult for black to trade queens, because if you go rook e7, you might be forced, in fact, to take it with your knight on the next move.
Yeah, I'm just showing what you were indicating. Good eye by you that maybe I can quickly show it on the board. That rook e7, rook takes e7, the knight has to take back, because if the queen takes back, bishop takes c6. Tanya found this. It takes the knight while protecting the queen and removing the guard of the black queen on e7 all at once. So if you take the bishop, you do in fact lose your queen. So good eye by you, Tanya. This will not be available to Denis, and if that's the case, he does not want to just trade the rooks and leave the white queen back there. Rook d8, smart move by him. He's flushing the queen out.
The white queen will retreat most likely to the center of the board. Alireza here, I'm not sure why he's pausing, but he can play on the clock. Look at that, 2.5 minutes against under 1 minute now. Denis, he's going to struggle. Again, we're back in this similar position where he's playing rook to d7, but now taking on c6 at least shatters the black pawn structure. Maybe there are options as well. It's definitely white knocking on the door, asking the questions. Denis, he's really holding together things by a thread. Bishop takes c6 looks so tempting. And Robert, actually, that variation you mentioned, going for the black king, not even trading queens, it's still available for white. It's still on tap.
It is available, but not that easy to assess properly, because white's pawn structure is worse. And Tanya, he plays your decision from earlier. He's trying to provoke g5 and make this king feel weaker. At some point, the bishop can reroute to c2, and that h7 pawn at long last could be hunted. So Tanya, I like this move. Are you starting to fret for Denis, who's down under 30 seconds?
Robert, it's been so instructive the way Alireza does these things. He provokes pawn moves. He did it against Jan Nepomniachtchi, provoking g3 to open up his bishop diagonal. Here he's provoking g5 to open up black's king. And of course that would leave Alireza in big danger after the bishop would retreat. So he does, Denis in big danger. Denis does none of that. He wants to trade queens even if it comes at the cost of destroying his pawn structure. And to me, at first sight, with the bishop pair, it is actually very tempting to go into this endgame. David, do you think trading queens here will give some real chances to white?
I think I would trade queens just for an element of safety for white. You can kind of press for a win with zero risk, but it is also a pawn sacrifice. So maybe Alireza will get tempted to capture the black knight now on c6 and take on that square twice, the white bishop, and then the white queen can take. That's a big pawn to win any endgame would then be winning for white, but your queen temporarily would be a bit distanced from her king. I think Alireza deciding how ambitious to be. If he takes queens, yes, he's better, but might not win. He could have gone pawn hunting. No, he chooses the safer option, and only now shatters the black pawn structure. Now the white bishop a bit offside. I would want to get that back to the action as quickly as possible. There we go. Covers the entry point. The black rook was trying to come down to d2. And now it's what we call a 2-result game, Robert. White with an advantage, but is it enough?
That's the huge question right now. And for those of you who thinking, how can white win this game? If you can get your pawns going on this side of the board, I'm just going to quickly try to draw arrows. You're going to try to break free on the queen side over here. It's a long story, but down the line, black needs to be careful about that. For now, the white king will step in the center to attack the rook, protect the pawn. But black does want to start the game. You don't have enough go after pawns. If, say, Tanya, I feel like white has good rooks, and he's giving up f2 to win. Reza.
I do away from the queen side pawns, and it gives one point here is for Dennis. But Alireza is going to try to push this one with a tempo right. Break this. Do you try to trade off the hand forward? I do like white's position despite black's activity.
Simply has a better pawn structure. The two on the other flank, the queen side, white has a 3-on-2 advantage, as we know from any sports. Having an extra body often overwhelms the opponent, and white's king can actually journey around towards a5. It might be headed in that direction. Looks like white's queenside majority is going to at least deflect the black army, maybe just win the game on the spot. I'm really surprised, I've got to say, that Dennis allowed the kind of c-pawn to drop for the f-pawn. Now it's just pure suffering. And like you said, Tanya, key ingredient is that white can bully the opponent with the threat of a bishop exchange. If bishops disappear, white simply wins. King and pawn endgame, better pawn structure, pass pawn, which he's about to create. He is winning. Still some work to do, Robert, to get the king in, but this is the first step.
Well, that was given a question mark, but black's response was bad because now the carpet is rolled out for the white king. So what Dennis needed to do was sit put. He needed to stay there with not allowing the white king in. I think you can even give away this b pawn at some point, used as a decoy, and then the white king marches towards the black pawns, and they will in fact fall. I think Dennis, down to 2 seconds, he knows that this one is Alireza's for the taking. He can't keep his miserable pawn structure defended.
Dennis could have an hour on his clock right now, and I don't see him defending this position. White has this really strong b passer. Black, as you pointed out, is impossible ever for him to create counterplay on the king side with the passed pawn. And combining the threats of the b pawn advancing forward and the king infiltrating to that e6 square, this is Alireza's game. And now he's deflecting black's king to enter with his own king to grab the king side pawns. Wow.
That was sweet, David. That's liquidation. That's grinding like a grandmaster.
Beautiful technique, simplifying the equation. Black's king was too far away. White was even temporarily down a pawn, but this is an easily winning endgame. Dennis is about to resign. And there we go. Alireza wins the endgame in perfect style. Really impressive. Ooh, Dennis there, just on the back foot from the off and couldn't fight back. Alireza strikes first.
And in a very strategically outplayed game there by Alireza with the white pieces. There weren't too many tactics involved. He just kept the pressure on, slowly improved the position, and we see Dennis there. He's perhaps having a look at what could have gone better, but maybe it's time for him to think about what he really wants to do in the next game, because it is the final game for Denis Lazovic. It is a must win a game for Dennis. He starts with the white pieces. Alireza needs only a draw to take the match victory to challenge Magnus in the grand final. What are our predictions right now? Robert, what are the chances of Dennis making a comeback?
Well, I was saying that Dennis is, the best part about his game is he rarely loses. But the struggle is when you're playing against these super talents like Alireza Firouzja, it's not often you win. So for Dennis, he needs to play risky riskier chess. That's not his style. It's not his nature. Even at the Champion Chess Tour Finals, there were games in the second one of the match where instead of just going all out and risk losing, the games ended peacefully quite quickly. So I fear for Dennis, being in a hole is not good for him. But if he could beat Magnus Carlsen yesterday with the black pieces, went down by a point, why not today with the white pieces against Alireza?
Rarely plays solid, or he often allows chance to get a position where he can provoke Alireza. He's not going to get many opportunities in this next game, Dennis, to strike back. But he has to, even if it's just a half chance, go on the attack, go on the front foot. I've got to say, though, it's going to be really, really kind of debilitating, this last defeat from Dennis. It's really hard to swallow because he nearly never loses in that style. You rarely see Dennis get ground down. So to recover is the first step, and then to strike, to go on the attack, that's the second.
It's quite ironic because it feels as if Alireza Firouzja won a game in the style of Denis Lazovic. It felt like a strategic positional masterpiece, just outplaying on space the double bishop pair, the advantage of the bishop pair, playing really well, good technique in the endgame. And now, for Denis to do the same, he needs to play in the style of Alireza Firouzja. He needs to create a mess. He needs to try to get Alireza into those tactical skirmishes where both players have the opportunity to go wrong. Denis Lazovic he did strike back against the world number one. He has the potential to strike back. 1d4?
I think that for Denis Lazovic, it is really against his nature to play some random, risky line. He plays solid. Even this opening, he's playing e3, which is the most principled, classical way to handle this. You are allowing yourself to get double pawns, sure, but in return, you control the center. So this is, I think, a good start for Denis. We'll see if Alireza plays some of the forcing lines with his pawn pushing in the center, but those kind of pawn pushes with white getting the bishop pair, there are some risks attached. David, I have to say, I think Alireza should not be displeased with the start.
That's for sure, Robin. And I like the fact that Alireza is pausing. He's not rushing his moves here with black because potentially he didn't expect this variation. But also, he's fighting his natural instincts. We mentioned Alireza. He wants to play a really imbalanced position, but he doesn't need to here. A draw is enough. And there we go. We see a quick central tension, a quick exchange. There we go. White with one next. White can play around that pawn, lots of central control, and this is still well-known stuff, very well-known theory. And Tanya, do you think that this is a wise choice from Denis, not surprising the opponent? He's in his home comfort, his home territory here, but still super solid for black.
Super solid, but it's imbalanced, David. The pawn structure is imbalanced. Like you said, the isolated queen's pawn gives black the long-term advantage. If pieces are traded off, that suits black just fine. But for Denis, having this pawn in the center, it gives him those ideas of trying to create a kingside attack. We could see the queen and the bishop line up on the diagonal. The knight from c3 could jump onto e3. The knight from e2 will try to aim to land on a kingside square via g3 at some point. There are these ideas, and having an imbalanced pawn structure, it does create chances for both players. We see this retreating move, but it's often to go forward next. Black wants to try to aim to put that bishop on f6, not only targeting that d4 pawn, but it can be a key defender for all these kingside attacking ideas that we're pointing out once black gets bishop. We're seeing all of this being played out. I'm also expecting Alireza at some point to go b6, bishop b7. Meanwhile, for white to finish development. It's a long game, but I would say in a must-win situation, Denis should be
turns. It shows me that it's comfortable for him either. As David said, he's not really comfortable just sitting and doing nothing. It's not to his liking. So as Alireza keeps thinking, you look at Denis's clock and you're like, well, why not just play on? Then later in the game, go for something perhaps speculative or puts the black king in danger. David, I have to say that Alireza, the way he's been playing thus far, suddenly it's concerning me because I don't think he feels quite at home.
It feels like, as we mentioned, fighting those instincts, fighting the kind of temptation to play something a bit more kind of ambitious, aggressive. Instead, he's just trying to be super solid as black, and that's totally fair enough. That's kind of what we expected with the match situation. But I think you're right, Robert. The clock situation gives it away. Alareza's already down 2 minutes. Some of the moves he's made as well, it doesn't feel like he's too comfortable at all. Dennis's moves, on the other hand, really natural. Bishop to h6 gains a tempo against the black rook. The white rooks now will flood towards the center. Firstly, you have to choose squares. I'm always a bit tentative about which squares to choose. Is it D1, E1, C1? But that's Dennis's choice, luckily, not mine. And it will come down to whether at some point Firouzja can just break the tension, trade off some pieces, and guide it towards safety. Even if he's not comfortable here, Tanya, even if this isn't his kind of normal play zone, Firouzja, his moves are natural as well. Bishop to b7 next move, and yeah, it's hard to imagine anything going wrong, at least in the near future.
And I saw a featured chat there saying that if Alireza plays for a draw, he will lose. And I think very often that is, we see that happen quite a bit. When a player just needs a draw, you don't take those objective decisions, you play too much for a draw, going against your own instincts, going against your own intuition, and that can backfire. But Alireza, right, we saw him, what he did in his match against Jan Nepomniachtchi. He traded off all the pieces when he needed to, even though he had a better position, because that worked for the match. We're seeing him with that similar approach here. He wants to try to keep things under control. But again, I'm going to repeat, I think for Dennis, he's got reasons to be pleased with this outcome. It isn't better for white. Black's doing fine. Yes, he's got the IQP with white, but it still feels like there are so many pieces on the board. Not a single set of minor pieces has been traded off. If ever black takes on c3 at any moment, white can recapture with the b pawn, making sure that the b pawn and the c pawn are connected, and there's no more IQP. You were talking about who is it easier to play. I also see moves like rook e1, rook d1 coming in. This is going to be a big fight, Robert.
It is, and I think for Dennis, he will have to follow up this move, Queen F3, which I like. Follow this one up quickly. There's already an idea. Can I take on D5? Then black will be saddled with an isolated pawn. But what you need to calculate is, can black take with the queen? I'm not so sure, as bishop E4 comes to mind, and now there's some problems on the diagonal. And if knight takes D5, E takes D5, you both get isolated pawns. It's about who can operate around it. But instead, Dennis saying, I don't want symmetry. I'm going to place my bishop on E4. Tanya, your point is well taken. Knight takes D3. You can take back with the pawn and sort of fix your pawn structure, or at least transition from isolated pawn to a bit of a hanging pawn structure. And hanging pawn structures are known for their dynamic opportunities. David, I have to say, the last couple of moves, both players are playing accurately. Good chess, but I still am liking how the game is going from white's perspective, at least until I just saw this move, knight a5. That is a very good decision from Alireza.
A very good decision. He's essentially just preparing for all of these exchanges. Now, if white does take on d5, we'll see bishops, knights, queens potentially even disappear, and not good news for Denis Lazovic in a situation he needs to win. That will just fizzle out towards equality. So now this stronghold, that one square that you've highlighted there, the red square, d5, black can play around it. The black knight might come into c4, black's rook will come to c8. I also want to mention one kind of thing for Denis Lazovic to worry about. He's not used to having worse pawn structures. We talk about him as a grinder. He loves just having kind of really harmonious structures where he's got the kind of the long-term trumps up his sleeve. I think the pressure of having the isolated queen's pawn that we've been talking about, that is not an easy kind of structure to handle. So wise choice maybe from Firouzja, and black's position, as with you, Robert, I feel it's growing on me. It looks like Firouzja, he's stabilized, and that is the key here. Tanya, you mentioned you liked white's natural moves. What do you think he should be doing next? What's the next step for Denis Lazovic in his quest for victory?
Well, Dennis is in a thing, so it can't be that easy. If you have to play intuitively here, you think about bringing your rooks to the game. Either the rook comes to e1 or the other rook comes to c1. But the bigger question I think about this position has to be more of an overview, because we might even see a pawn structure transformation. From an isolated queen's pawn, in a couple of moves, we might see a fixed pawn structure in the center with the trades on d5. And I think we have to think and talk about that, because if black is able to get a pawn on d5 and white has a pawn on d4, and imagine all the pieces, the bishop, the light squared bishops traded off, the knights are traded off, the queens are off the board, and you get this pawn structure, then the fact that Alireza has a dark squared bishop which can target d4, and Dennis will be left with a dark squared bishop which cannot target d5, that works in Alireza's favor. So trades are super important. He avoids them right now because I really think he needs to keep pieces on the board. He needs to continue playing with this isolated queen's pawn and not go for that fixed center.
That was a very good and deep point by Tanya, that this d4 pawn is on the same color as this bishop on e7, which means the bishop can go after it, and white's bishop on a dark square can't go after any of the light pawns. So look at Dennis. He first brings his rook to a fully open file. I would expect that black is tempted to do the same, but now we are speaking about tactics, and this d5 knight may be captured here. And I just want to go down one quick rabbit hole of analysis, because rook c8, I think that's a move you play, an automatic move. But if we can look at this line, and knight takes d5, if you just take back on d5, well, this rook takes on c8, and now the bishop or the queen is distracted, and so you drop this pawn in the center. Of course, the game continues. It's not like black has lost, but if you play with your hand rather than playing with your brain, you could drop a pawn immediately. So rook c8, a natural idea, but not the right time for it. In the game, I expect, bishop to f6, Tanya's move, looks very strong to me. This knight, of course, wants to go into c4, but there still will be tactics with this rook lined up on c1. So I think Dennis's last move, David, to my eyes, looks like a great choice, and it's causing Alireza to think.
That's a really important step to force the opponent down on the clock. That's where his chances will lie after all, Denis Lazovic. He needs to stay ahead of the opponent. We saw the clock come back to bite him yesterday against Magnus, earlier in the first game against Firouzja. Rook c1, all of these little hidden nuances, these little tactics, a little bit of calculation to do for the first time Firouzja. Ultimately, I think black is still super solid. You can just wait, queen to d7, for example. I don't see any rush. And then start to connect the black rooks, bring one to c8. Black is still fine, but yeah, the clock situation healthier than ever. This is Denis's chance, these next few moves. We talked about urgency earlier in another match. This is urgent, these next few moves, because otherwise pieces will disappear. Those lines that we showed, if they work for black, then it's total safety. There's nothing in between, really. It's not a playable advantage for white. So, wow, Firouzja decided to trade dark squared bishops. Big decision, and we talked about those bishops, the dynamic between them in an endgame favouring black long term. Looks like white is forced to trade them off, but what next, Tanya? Who's happier about this, other than the clock situation where Denis now suddenly up?
If white can trade these dark squared bishops and trade everything on the central square as well, step one done, and take everything on d5, I would think that there's reason to be happy. If you take knight takes d5 at this moment, and if black was to respond, I don't think black should recapture with the pawn. I think that would be a big strategic mistake. But if you were to take pawn takes knight, just fall back with the bishop, and I think the trades really start favoring white. The big question is, what if black takes with the bishop himself? And we actually see a bunch of trades happen. What do we think about that endgame? White's got control over the c file, a knight which can perhaps target the d5 pawn even sooner. And if not, is there anything better than that, Robert? Does white keep the tension, or does white go for these trades?
Difficult choice right now, because the more trades that happen, oftentimes in the back of our head, we're like, the more likely it's going to be a draw. This is not a position with extra material for either side. In fact, both players have placed their pieces on strong squares. This knight on the rim, it's not dim, because there are actually some key squares, some light squares the knight can jump into, and white's pieces, they're all protecting one another. So, Tanya, I'm with you. I'm also tempted to take on d5, slam a rook down on c7, but I note that even when my rook lands on c7, the black rook can step up. So I think black is just in time in so many of these different positions. When white tries to go in the offensive, pieces get traded, and that would scare me if I'm Denis. What also would scare me, David, is that Denis is now below 4 minutes. We've seen him get in time trouble, and it's what Magnus said, that Denis, he needs to conserve more time because he can't live on just seconds against these top players.
These top players, they're sharks. They sense a bit of weakness, and they really, really kind of up their level of trickery once once you're low on time. I think Dennis is fighting against his inner demons here. He wants to take on d5. If he didn't need to win at all costs, he would play that move instantly because it removes all risk for white. But as you mentioned, lower risk, also lower potential reward there, unfortunately. And I'm looking at the body language. Dennis looks stressed. Alireza, I mean, I'm not an expert, but he looks super chill to me, Tanya. He looks like he's got everything under control. And if knight takes d5 happens, I think a draw is still the most likely result. So I think, is it justified, Alireza's kind of state of mind right now?
Very different body languages there. And you don't need to be an expert to actually see how relaxed Alireza is about his position, and completely agree. The problem for Dennis here is not the position on the board. White's doing absolutely fine. Maybe perhaps White's even happy to get this position that you do, because that bishop on b7, it's behind its own pawn. White's bishop will be more active. You can jump in with that rook to c7, force black to trade on e7, then just fall back with the bishop and keep playing. But it's never going to be enough to call it close to getting those big chances to create a mess. It's a symmetrical pawn structure now, and given the map situation, that's just not enough for Denis Lazovic.
Not clear where he puts his pieces from here. As you said, the roles have been reversed a bit. That's now the black pawn on d5 that will be weaker than the white pawn on d4 because the light square bishop can attack it. But that's not enough to say at some point maybe I'll get to attack a pawn, and we are going down a direct line. So rook e7, that was given a brilliant move. Interesting, I think it's because it sacrificed a piece, but it wasn't a real sacrifice. But we're going down a forcing path because bishop takes, queen takes. It looks like a knight is hanging, but don't forget about your rook in the corner. So suddenly Dennis up a pawn. But David, I'm looking at this, and I think that black has a couple choices. Bring a rook to c8, bring a rook to e8, bring a rook to d8 in the center, and then this knight for black will go into a square like c4. I feel like black's going to be able to regain the pawn.
It feels like it's within the realms of equality, likely a draw if black is accurate, but it is still a bit of an if. And I like the fact that Dennis has gone for this variation, because when you're low on time, as we mentioned earlier, you need to find forcing moves. You need just easy kind of instinctive moves available. If he'd retreated and not gone for this, then I would have actually feared him even surviving that game. And a question mark, meanwhile, Tanya, attached to the most natural move in the position. Now the white queen is hit, the white knight is hit, but okay, Dennis clings onto his pawn. How big do you think his winning chances here?
I'm going to be honest, I actually missed that after rook e7, black ends up losing the d5 pawn. And that it's not over till you don't gain that pawn or create direct activity. Also notice the lack of harmony in black's pieces. That knight on a5, it's not coming back into the game for a while right now. Queen e4, a nice centralized square there. White can start improving his own pieces. Put that rook from f1 to d1. Start defending that d4 pawn to free your own knight. It's an extra pawn for white. And I have to say, that's the most that Dennis has had this entire game, Robert.
I'm giving and noting that extra pawn on d4. That's a good pawn right there. And I want to point out a star move by Denis Lazovic. Instead of retreating back to f3, which was super tempting, he covers the c4 square. He covers the b3 square. So what I was talking about when I threw to David before was the black knight would get in, and likely that Alireza gets his pawn back. No, he is not getting his pawn back. That remains on d4. The knight, it can't jump into c4. Technically, perhaps you can get to b3 at some point because the white queen is tied to the knight on e2, but that's just playing for tricks. I like what Dennis has accomplished here, and Alireza, he's the one who should feel a bit nervous. He's glad to be ahead on time. He's unhappy to be down a pawn that, by the way, can start pushing, and once it starts, it may not be able to stop, Tanya.
Completely agree. d5 a big threat. And once that white knight comes into the game, it's going to be more difficult. David, I see that Evalbar seems to say that things are still level for black, but do you think that's deceptive? Does Dennis have real chances here?
Very deceptive. It's definitely up to Firouzja to prove it. And yes, the eval bar might say level, but it's going to be a really narrow path for black with supremely high accuracy needed. And okay, rook to c8, really nice move. Actually threatening to come in, and especially while white's king is vulnerable on the back rank, you do start to feel a bit nervous. I was going to say that feature chat earlier. If Dennis goes and wins this game, that feature chat earlier saying playing for a draw is risky, that will just be inspired, and we'll need to bring it back, because it feels like Alireza was playing complacently for a draw for a long time, understandably so, but now he really needs to up his game. Knight c3 blocks that black rook, but the black queen does have an active square to jump to. I'm seeing tactics all over the place now. Big threats on the board. Rook takes knight would undermine white's rook. And suddenly Dennis on the defensive. And there was a big threat. He moves the rook away. But black's queen has entered. That's always a bit scary. The blue arrow gets 50 seconds against 2 minutes. Control here to utilize this extra pawn.
On d4, and if you go back to d1, that rook takes c3 threat, that is what's keeping black in the game. The advantage allegedly is gone. We see the rooks come off the board. This pass, white is able to keep it. And after queen,
that's going to be the absolute key, right? Get one move away from coming to the game. But watch out, there are back rank threats. Once the black king falls back, our blue arrow is telling us king g8 is the best move. White doesn't have time to start pushing that d pawn just yet. There's a big threat. Queen c1 is checkmate. So you've still got to push one, create a lift for your king. Go h3. He goes h4. That is being more aggressive right now. Also eyeing to clamp down alpha 0 style. h5, h6, creating a mating net against the black king. Finally, black's knight is in the game. But I think this is going to start getting tricky. Queen knight versus queen knight. We might be seeing tactics very soon, David.
Definitely. Already massive threats there. The white knight is hopping in, leaping in. And let's forget the evaluation bar for now. Queen and knights, as we've seen multiple times throughout Division 1 this season already, during the Chessable Masters, they're such a fearsome attacking duo. The perfect combo if you're going for the opponent's king. So Dennis, he's left himself with enough ingredients here, enough ammunition to cause threats. Yes, it should be a draw because pawns are disappearing. I'm assuming black's going to take on b2. I'm not sure with which piece. And if the queens ever disappear, black is totally safe. But for now, there's still sufficient winning chances. One hurdle here, Robert, though. I'm still looking at that clock. 30 seconds. It could go wrong so quickly.
it can, but it's also easier for white to play because white's king is safe and sound, and it's black's king that might be in a checkmating net. As we were highlighting, the knight hopping into e7, the black king goes to f8, and you're just one slip away from getting checkmated. So knight d5 is automatic. I think that Dennis has to play quickly here. It's given the blue arrow. That's not me. But knight e7 check, all of a sudden, it's uncomfortable for Alireza, and he may have a series that only moves himself. You don't just take a pawn on a3. It's not the time to go pawn grabbing in this position. Tanya, you have to be worried for Alireza. In fact, that move, the advantage is going up for white.
It's gonna be a time scramble. Both players under a minute now. Dennis is playing under 20 seconds, and it's also good news for white that you played the move h4 because you not only created a lift on h2, also a potential lift on h3 when required. He needs to watch out. There are lines to calculate. Comes in with a check. Black has to move. You still can't push the d pawn. The knight on e7, it can't be picked up. Queen takes knight would lose to queen h8. That knight was not on free.
Checkmate threat. Queen h8 is a big threat. Black needs to play king g8. We see it, Robert, there with the blue arrow. Only move. Farouche's got 30 seconds. He has to find it. And he does. And the game's
look
still on.
at Lazovic down to 2 seconds when he made that move. Let's remind everybody, they gain 2 seconds with every move they play. White is up a pawn again. Knight takes a3. Maybe the b6 pawn drops. So if this d pawn survives, I would actually try to push it as soon as I can. And with the knight maybe coming back to c6, d5 is available with forks on e7. This is really tricky. Alireza, Tanya, he's down under 20 seconds himself.
Yeah, this is just mouse skills, and they have to be tactically so sharp with mating ideas against the black king. White needs to watch out for any perpetual themes with queen f4 check, but that queen on f6 does a brilliant job. The d pawn has started advancing. Do not grab it. There's a big fork on e7. Things are getting really tricky and out of control here for black. But can he go for a queen trade? He does it because knight jumps back to e5, defending the d7 square.
It's certain control, but wow, there was a moment the white pawn could have pushed forward. Could it push forward now? It's going to be a race. Dennis shaking his head. He has to work out that he can push the pawn, he can win the knight, and the knight gets back to stop the b pawn just in time. He's a piece up, but is it enough, Robert? He's winning a knight for pawn on material, but the knight is going to be paralyzed to that b pawn.
But the evaluation bar, it's at zeros, but it's misleading. I actually think white has chances to win this game, and you actually see it's starting to creep up a little bit. The engine itself, not sure. This isn't a table-based position. Too many pieces remain. Objectively, with proper play, it should be a draw. But let's say you push your pawn too early, you may create weaknesses, and white can waste the tempo. This knight can go back and forth, and you already see that the makings of a position where opposition may be required. So, David, this is an end game that's not familiar to either player. Mistakes happen, especially under 5 seconds for each player.
It's like more mistakes are bound to happen. It should be a draw, but black is barely clinging on here. White's king at the right moment is going to make a dart. There we go for that black H pawn. And now again, it's a race. Can black just go for this white knight now? He's going for it, Firouzja. But it's a race between the white H pawn and the black B pawn. I think he's just in time here, Firouzja, to hold the draw. 4 seconds for Dennis. Tanya, I think it's about to end. Nothing to do. No way to keep the game going.
And I think it's going to happen now. This was a desperate try. Dennis could not keep the knight alive. They're going to queen at the same time. Dennis has to win. He's trying to do that. Both players will queen at the same time, but it's black's move as well. It's Alireza who has the extra pawn. It's not going to be enough to even create a chance here for Dennis.
Extra pawn for Alireza, but misplaced king. So if this queen can somehow grab this f5 pawn, you start to feel like you have chances. But look at Alireza bringing his queen to the defense of both, giving some checks. You don't want to drop either of these pawns, so his queen is in the perfect place. Alireza, yeah, he has this under control at this stage. But Dennis, credit to him. He played what should have been apparently a losing move, but a draw is the equivalent of a loss for Dennis at this stage. Alireza only needs to secure this half point.
And that was such a special position, being down a knight and knowing that you can hold it. David, how confident do you think Alireza was going into that endgame?
It was more necessity than out of confidence that he went for that, Firouzja. In the meantime, it is a draw. It is Firouzja who progresses, but Dennis threw everything at this game. He got so close. A lot of credit to him. Wow, what a topsy-turvy game. He came so close. Heartbreaking, but he's so impressive, the youngster.
It is the end of the road in the Chessable Masters for the 17-year-old Denis Lazovic, but he has left a big impression on the world with his play and undoubtedly will be back in the Champions Chess. So we can't wait to have him back in the fight as well. Eventually goes down to Alireza Firouzja, and Robert, Magnus Carlsen gets the match that he wanted.
Magnus Carlsen asked, and sometimes he shall receive. It didn't happen for the Classical World Championship. It is happening here in the Chessable Masters. Alireza Firouzja was on the brink of elimination from the very start of this event after losing a scramble against Fedoseev. So for to beat everybody that was Lazovic, credit to
And it's going to be well, David Denis Lazovic holding his own yesterday against Magnus and then today against Alireza as well, fighting back so close to bouncing back in this match in that second game.
Dennis was so close in that second game, but ultimately it wasn't to be. Alireza's defenses were too strong, were too sturdy. But I wanted to actually highlight in the earlier game, the decisive game ultimately, where Alireza broke through Denis's defenses to win the game, win the match. And I just wanted to highlight this final point. The technique, the endgame technique, really, really instructive. Here, white has entered. White has broken through the white king on a fantastic square. The white B pawn close to touchdown. But the black king is nearby. How to land the finishing touches. Black played the move Bishop f4, covering the promotion square, and this is testament to Alireza Firouzja's judgment, his calculation, his understanding. He played pawn to b7. It looks over hasty. Suddenly the pawn drops off, king to c7, but in this position he'd worked out a long variation, starting with a check. Always look for checks first, double exclamation mark. This is a mathematical equation simplifying things. The black bishop is forced to capture. Now, check, giving away your pride and joy, deflecting the black king. And after the bishop disappears, look at the race here. The white king simply too close, too near the black pawns, and black's king too far away. It was in this position Denis Lazovic resigned because the white f pawn is soon to step forward and soon to become a new fire from Firouzja in the endgame.
beautiful, instructive endgame technique on display by Alireza Firouzja in that one. And the next one as well, a difficult endgame that he did hold. And with that hold, he takes the match victory and gets the spot into the Chessable Masters Grand Final. We're going to go into a quick break and we will be back with Alireza Firouzja. You don't want to miss it. Stay with us.
Tour consists of 4 main online events and 1 live final. Each event will begin with a play-in tournament open to all grandmasters and top finishers from qualifying events. 69 players from the play-in will be joined on the second day by the 4 qualifiers. Double elimination brackets. The last players standing are your winners. The winner of Division 1 qualifies directly to the CCT Finals. The winner of Division 2 secures a spot in Division 1 at the next tour event, while the winner of Division 3 is guaranteed at least a spot in Division 2. In each event, players also accrue points for the season-long leaderboard. The final standings will decide who joins our Division 1 winners at the year-end CCT Live Finals. That's $1.7 million up for grabs in the 2024 Champions Chess Tour. So tune in and watch all the action as the best chess players in the world compete to be crowned the next CCT champion.
Hello, can I get 50 ELO back, please? Because one of my friends played on my account and lost 50. Thank you.
I've got friends like that too. When I'm frustrated or in a bad mood, or something strikes.
Maybe
my
a little bit, you know what? Maybe a little, maybe, you know, I don't know.
It's been a good night. Yeah. No, I have friends just like that, man. They come on my account. I wake up in the morning. Yeah.
Well, the good news is better to have friends who lose you rating points than gain you rating points, because then your account might be closed for cheating. Pro tip.
I am deeply sorry for the language I used. I will never ever use star and my sunshine. I go to bed dreaming of you, and when I wake up I think of you again, so I ask kindly please chess.com come with me to POM. Hugs and kisses.
We love you too. Unmute that man.
We love you too. I love all membos. I feel like we were being taunted just a little bit there, but at the same time, I'm not one to judge anyone's speech impediment, you know, and so welcome, you whiskily wabbit. I don't know what else to say.
And it's a gaming site, you know. When people write in and they've got the right sense of humor, it means a lot to us, because you know that's sure. The kind of the
good
vibes
stuff
we want.
And we're back. And I am going to ask you.
I'm feeling.
And it was peaceful result in all of them, but the games were absolutely crazy. They were a lot of fun to watch. Were they fun to play?
Yeah, sure, because both of us have very tactical and very aggressive style. So it always, whenever I'm playing him, I try to get out of the opening somehow. So I start the game with worst position in either color, but then I try to make it interesting and unbalanced.
So when you're playing against a player like Nepo, are you expecting it to get into wild territory?
Yeah, I'm expecting it, but most of the times it's not possible because he has checked all the openings, so it's very hard against him to get a game even. But yeah, it's time to time it's possible, but it's definitely in rapid. It helps that the time is less.
And then going into the Armageddon in that match against Yan, we were discussing if perhaps your bid was too low. It was, I think, 6 minutes and 40 seconds, if I'm not wrong, around that much time. What was your approach? Were you really wanting to play with black there?
Yeah, of course I wanted to play with black because for me, I think it doesn't matter 2-3 minutes because I could play fast and I think I could recover that. So, and if I have result odds, it helps. But depends on the opponent also. But yeah, I think I'm comfortable with having less time.
Yeah, and then that was a really cool Armageddon, and you took the match in that one. And then going into the next one immediately, you have to play Dennis, who's been phenomenal in this tournament so far. He's taken down so many of the big names. What was your approach getting into that final fight in the elimination bracket?
Yeah, I was happy playing against Dennis because his style is not very aggressive, so I could have a time to recover from the match against Nepo and get in the game because he normally doesn't play aggressive from the very beginning. So he's a very strong player. Of course, he beat everybody almost in this tournament. So I expect it to be a very hard match, but I thought I have good chances to win.
And how does it go when you're preparing for such a match? Do you go through those games that Dennis has had with Anish, with Hikaru, with Magnus?
No, I didn't prepare for Dennis actually. I just prepared a bit for Nepo, and that's it. I thought if I go through Nepo, then I will somehow do something against Dennis. So I said the first step is more important.
One step at a time, and you made it through. You mentioned that you didn't mind compromising on those extra minutes when it comes to the Armageddon. How are you finding this new time format? What do you think about this time control change?
Yeah, I think it definitely is better. The story is to make it less. Pretty good change with less time, so I'm happy, but I think everybody in general is happy with the change.
Yeah, and I think the fans are really happy as well because it means more entertainment for all of us. Alireza, how have you overall been feeling about your play so far in the Chessable Masters?
Yeah, I think I played a very good chess until here. The one match that I lost against Fedosev was very... it was not a very good day, and I was very unlucky in that match, I think. I was up the first game, and then I lost the second game with white. I blundered really badly. So, but in general, I'm very happy with my play. I think. I don't think I know that I need to change so much for the grand final. If I keep playing this level, I have chances, I think.
And that's the big one coming up. It's on Wednesday. You'll be playing against Magnus. We're all very excited about that matchup. Looking ahead into it, to go into that grand final, knowing that you have to beat Magnus twice.
Yeah, of course, beating this advantage is really big for him because he could play without any pressure the first match. So, for instance, if it gets to Armageddon, then it will be a big advantage for him because then he plays the Armageddon without worrying so much. So, yeah, it would be very, very tough. But for instance, Maxime did it before, so I think there are chances. But yeah, it will be very difficult.
Yeah, I was just about to say Maxime's done it, so there's a lot of inspiration to take from that one as well. We're really excited about it, and chat's really excited about it. We've got a chat question for you. I'm going to bring that up. It's by, oh my gosh, I don't even know how to pronounce this. I'm going to skip the name. But how do you feel about your playing style against Magnus, considering he's
trying to be more comfortable with my style, for instance, my kind of style. He's trying different positions, different tactical positions. So he's adapting to it, I think. So he's playing much better than 3-4 years ago against the people that has my style, like very aggressive, and that's why probably he's winning more tournaments now. So it would be difficult, but I think I always have chances against him because of my style and everything.
And we talk about your style a lot, Alireza. If you had to sort of describe it, just elaborate it a little bit for us. How would you describe your own style of play?
Yeah, I think it's not easy to describe it. It's just calculate, so I just play more intuitively. So maybe that way you can describe it.
And do you think having this intuition, this style of relying more on intuition, especially works with less time on the clock?
Yeah, of course it helps because I played thousands of bullet games, so it's of course I have that also, so it helps, of course.
Yeah, it's awesome to see you with seconds on the clock and the speed that you bring on. And we got one more question from Juan Caldos, and he wants to know, what do the next couple of months look like for you in the lead up to the candidates?
Yeah, I will play the 960 tournament in Germany in 2-3 days. There's a chance that I manage to make it to candidates, so I will definitely try to use the best out of it. So, but it will be very tough, very long. So I will try to prepare very hard for it, but yeah, it could go. It will be interesting.
We look forward to watching you in the candidates, and we really look forward to watching you on Wednesday battle it out against Magnus Alireza. We'll see you then.
Thank you.
Thank you. Alireza Firouzja books his spot into the grand final, and on the line will be the ticket, the golden ticket to the season-end tour final. Magnus Carlsen wanted to fight Alireza. He gets his wish, and what a day of chess it's been. David, Alireza really earned his spot into that grand final.
Yeah, we said it beforehand. If he were to get there, he would have to do it the hard way. It was 3 really tough games against Jan Nepomniachtchi, and he had to dig deep to find the extra. See his chances secretly against Magnus.
Yeah, and it's also so interesting with the dynamics, Robert, of the candidates coming up. Players, of course, don't want to reveal too much of their preparation. They don't want to reveal anything about their preparation. How do you think that would play out in this big grand final with so much on the line?
Well, against Magnus Carlsen, you kind of expect that the #1 rated player in the world will play whatever he feels like. So it's not even like preparation often helps you against him. I think Alireza at this moment, he's just happy to secure a minimum second place finish, which means we'll see him in Division 1 in our second event of the tour. So for all you Alireza fans out there, you should be particularly happy about that. So I think considering he lost his first match, Alireza, he's not even considering what Magnus will play. He's just taking in this great day. He gets a day off tomorrow, and preparation, that's for another time. He's not going to worry about it yet.
It's going to be a big fight when the two play each other. And of course, Alireza has to beat Magnus not once, but twice in that. And before we wrap up, let's bring up our Chessable Masters standings presented by our wealth management partners, Julius Baer. And there we've got more fill in the blanks being filled up right there with Dennis Lazovic, Jan Nepomniachtchi, the end of their journey in the Chessable Masters. Dennis with a big paycheck of $15,000 for all the hard work that he's.
As ever, it feels like we're saying goodbye to these huge names day by day. Ultimately, it was a triumph of youth with Alireza over experience with Jan Nepomniachtchi, and I just want to say
And we keep talking about the finals on Wednesday, so everyone at home must be wondering what's happening tomorrow. We will cover the Division 2 and Division 3 grand finals, and awaiting the winner coming up from the losers final is Vincent Keimer. He took down Levon Aronian in the winners final. Now Levon, he's duking out with Benjamin Bach. That should be a familiar name to you all because he's a popular streamer and content creator, and also a Dutch grandmaster who, when it comes down to it, he could fight with the best of them. Look who he beat in the losers semifinal, Vladislav Artemiev. Before that, he took down Anish Giri, and this is a huge bracket, so large in fact that I can't see it. I wear glasses for a reason, but we are whittled down to just 3 players. Levon Aronian fighting for his life in the losers final against Benjamin Bach. So Vincent Keimer, that's a junior, a prodigy, and someone we gladly get to watch tomorrow.
Into Division 3, it will be the final chat. It's a goodbye from us. We will see you tomorrow.
Something. You're right. What do we think about that bishop on b3 here? I'm wondering if maybe bishop on c2 might be a little bit better, because I mean, it's just staring at that e6, you know, pawn, and sure, if black allows for f5, f7 to fall, but it looks very unlikely here. So I wonder if there's a way for white to get that bishop into play.
And also, you know, bishop is no longer, you know, targeting the king, which was earlier there on g8. Currently, there is no king on g8. There is a rook. Okay, but you're absolutely right. Like, bishop is doing nothing on this deck, and you have to do something about it. You have to somehow bring it to the game. But for now, I think the huge problem is that there is an attack going on, and if we just start, you know, bring in the bishop, like bishop d1, bishop f3, I don't know if we're in time to protect from that attack. So that's why maybe faster would be to bring the rooks, like rook f2, to cover on the second rank and bring the other rook, or to play king f2, king e2, trying to escape from there. Rook g5. Okay.
Interesting. Yes, attacking the h5.
Okay, so many mistakes, one after another being played. And now e5. Now actually we need bishop on b3.
Yeah, now it works.
Now this can be taken, but there is always problems. Is there rook g3, queen g5? And okay, wait, but there is also checkmate. It's not possible. Lemon has 2 minutes. It's actually very funny to, you know, follow the game and commentate on the game, which is like one player has 2 seconds on the clock while the other player has 2 minutes on the clock.
We've been seeing this theme so much the past few games, with 5 seconds on the clock versus 4 minutes.
Ah, wait, rook f6. Oh my god.
Wow.
He sacrificed a rook on g3, and now it's 2 rooks against the queen, which is pretty interesting because I don't think that king is in a huge danger. We have seen other endgames, if you remember. Oh wait, actually there is also rook g8, always the threat of the checkmate.
Yes, I was looking at that too. So there's opportunities here for both sides. But you know, as we've discussed multiple times, the queen is tricky usually, but at least in this situation, once the rooks are lined up on the same file, there are threats possible.
Exactly, and the point here is that the draw is enough for Benjamin to promote, to the finals tomorrow, to the grand finals, which will happen tomorrow. So Levon has to make sure he's winning this game in some way, and it's very tough. Because those two rooks are pretty active. That's why he's trying to bring his bishop here to g5 to block them on this file. Apparently some
I like that bishop on g5. It fixes a lot of the problems.
Exactly, yeah. Apparently making some mistakes, but rook wants to join the f8 square, so that's attacking some king, maybe finding some perpetual.
Oh.
So many. Wait, what?
There is a blunder
in the room.
No.
Oh no.
Oh, and a resignation from Benjamin Bach.
Oh my god.
That's such a tragic way to lose the rook. With 5 seconds on the clock, very difficult to see something like that. A fork such as that one.
Of course, like bishop earlier was protecting that fork, and that's why he was like not really careful enough about that. And that's why sometimes when you're playing, especially with such low on time, you know that your bishop is covering d1. You have this in your subconsciousness, and you play bishop d5 because you think that this threat is taken care of. But here it is, queen d1 and resignation. So we're going to see Armageddon.
Can I wait, so, okay, yes. I was thinking of something else, but never mind. Okay, Armageddon. And wait, what are we looking at now? I got lost for a second. I was so into that game. I'm like, wait, can I find something else? But I couldn't. Okay. Moving on.
Yeah, let's move on here because in the Division 3 loser brackets final, we have Armageddon game already ongoing for quite a while. We can see both players have around 3-4 minutes on the clock. About the bidding to this match, Bortnik beats 10 minutes. Last few matches he was bidding 10 minutes confidently.
This game is also looking really interesting. We have the black rook on d2, so there might be some action going on over there. d3 is looking a little bit weak, and now the pawns or the rooks are both on the second rank, and as we've seen in multiple games, it can get very ugly really quickly when your opponent is able to get on the 7th or the second rank, right? So this is going to definitely be an interesting game.
Don't understand why computer is saying that it's not a good move. Rook c2 is a huge threat. But yeah, just to say that Grishuk started with 8 minutes. He was bidding 8 minutes. Bortnik bid 10 minutes. I don't know if Grishuk knew that Bortnik would bid something like 10 minutes. If he would bid something like 9 minutes 59 seconds. Just to make sure.
I'm wondering here if there is a potential rook sacrifice on g7. Just looking at it right off the bat. I'm not quite sure, but I was thinking since the rook on e1 is on the open file, there might be some sort of play with the queen and the rook. But wow, okay, rook first comes up to e8. That's definitely an option as well. So I guess it's not so easy once again for black. But black's position still looking really, or white's position still looking very scary here. Because they're going to have to keep checking because g2 is just so extremely weak here.
The both sides are under attack. And it's a question like who is going to checkmate first. We see evaluation bar says to us casually 0, it's equal, it's draw. Again, it's Armageddon game, draws prefers black. if there is a draw, Grishuk is winning this game. This match, sorry. King f7, forking those two rooks. The king is doing a fork.
But with the diagonal being open for the queen, though, there's a sacrifice, right, on g7, and maybe that is why.
White try to attack here because all the black pieces are looking towards the g2 square, and maybe something like queen g3, bringing the queen somewhere, attacking. But you have to make sure you're doing everything with a check, because if you're not making it with a check, there is going to be a checkmate on g2, which is very, very tough. So the only check here is queen e7 or queen g3. That's, you have to decide what you're doing about that. And okay, also there is rook e7, but I think rook e7 it's maybe not really, or maybe it's working. I mean, it's very hard actually to say. Queen g3 check, okay. So now the point is king cannot go to h7. It would be a checkmate.
Oh boy.
Wait, what?
So black will be left with the rook after this. Because there really is no way of checking the king after this with this queen sacrifice, right? So then this is a winning endgame for black.
I think that he was not expecting this queen of was but actually, yeah, when it's going to be just enough for black. Very interesting, because both previous games were so fighting for these players that probably that's why Bortnik was picking the white pieces, trying somehow to find a way to. Okay, this looks like okay. Actually, the computer said now it's equality. So probably no one can do anything here.
Yeah, I calculated in my head and I thought that white or black would be up a rook here if they played it right. But no, I think I calculated wrong. So
yeah,
interesting.
So yeah, we probably are.
What was the sequence that was winning for black here then? Because it didn't seem so simple once again.
I think that's just first taking on b2 and then taking on g2. So like just trying to win as many pawns as possible and then to take on g2. But I mean, for just simple for Grishuk, it doesn't matter, because for him draw is enough, and that's,
I see,
that's the whole point. He's okay with a draw, and he can even funnily play here h5 move. Yeah, I wanted to say h5, king h2, and it's like, and it's
a nice draw. Or yeah, nice stalemate.
So basically he has, in order to win, and that's how the game finishes. So we have Grishuk promoting for tomorrow's grand finals. He's going to face Sarana again, right? I think, yes. So Sarana won against Grishuk in the previous match in the winner semifinals, and tomorrow he's going to challenge him again. So that's why, winning one time is not enough. You have to win the player 2 times. So that's going to be a match for tomorrow. We're going back for our match, Benjamin Bok against Levon Aronian. And here we go. This is Armageddon game already. So 1-1. Aronian managed to win the previous game. And the beating was following. Bok beat 6 minutes and 59 seconds, and he takes black, obviously. Don't want to take, almost 7 minutes and then take white. So draw prefers black. If there is a draw, then it means that Levon Aronian is going to win. What do we have here in position? Some middle game already.
Looking like an interesting position. Okay, white is offering a trade here with the queens on c5. And black has an isolated queen pawn on d5, so of course there won't be an ideal endgame if obviously white tries to push it to endgame, since isolated queen pawns don't do well in endgames, which seems what they might be potentially doing here as well.
Yeah, I mean, there is this isolated queen pawn on d5. That's why the positions, when you are trading the pieces, it's because the pawn is becoming weaker and weaker, and we can assume, okay, that in the pawn endgame it is for sure winning for whites. I mean, most likely, but yeah, we see some trades happening here. I would say Aronian might be pretty confident in his position to trade so fast, because I would still think for some time before trading, because this is still a weakness. And I see also rook entering somewhere on the 7th rank, and but of course, like rook e7 can always protect. So there is always a way, like for example, rook c7, rook e7, rook c8, rook e8, and we repeat it, and it's a draw, and Levon Aronian is a winner. So that's why king f8 was played to cover the square.
All right, so seems like white is going to try to bring their king to the center here.
To attack this pawn.
Yeah, I do want to see that knight on d2, perhaps doing a bit more. It seems very passive there right now.
Yeah, maybe two. Yeah.
Right, redirecting it to attack the d5 pawn. Not a bad strategy here.
Yeah, for sure. Like the question is if you want to trade one more pair of pieces, like protect trading this other knight, or just keep the other knight and bring it to c3, attacking the pawn, and try to create something also against the pawns on the queen side, because rook is actually dominating on the c file, but for now there is not much what can be done. Wait a second.
This is interesting. They gave up the d5 pawn.
Cannot
because
be taken.
Of the fork here. Okay, well, how about something just like f5 or f3 being pushed here?
f5? Yeah, maybe. The question here is if knight is going to take. Of course, like now we should take care about the rooks, but let's say it takes. No, he doesn't do it. He's going to c7. Rook e7. Okay, just repeating a couple of times. Of course, he will not repeat because he has to win this game to win the match. And going back now with the rook.
Yeah, the f3 hangs the rook.
Yeah. So the problem is that rook c5 cannot cannot be played because there is knight coming back to e4, attacking the rook one more time. I mean, you can prepare it with f3, but then it weakens e3. Like, I'm a little bit confused what to play here for white. I mean, I would really say, you know, Elena, you said already, knight on d2 is doing nothing. Just
because you do create certain weaknesses as well by doing that. So yeah, I do think that just maybe better coordinating the knight here wouldn't be too bad of a move.
This is actually a good point because after f4, where does the knight go? The only square is to go without losing a pawn is knight to d7 and then rook c7. Maybe it could be some kind of a way to create initiative for white. What do you think?
Yeah, perhaps. But, you know, knights are a little traumatizing, so who knows where that knight can hop around to. So you got to be very careful, right? When you're pushing pawns and attacking knights. But yeah, no, it can definitely work. Definitely. I wonder what, you know, how black would respond after that with rook to c7.
Yeah, I mean, computer likes white's position. I mean, I can definitely understand why. Knight goes to f3. That's what we were talking about. Knight has to go somewhere from d2, and Bok decides to go to... I mean, to me, moves looks kind of fine, but maybe there are some deep stuff which we don't see like this with the naked eye. Okay, of course you don't take here. The question is if there is... Oh, wait, I have an idea. What if we play rook c7, rook is... Oh, he takes. Okay, never mind. My idea was to bring the knight to e6 somehow. So for example, maybe just quickly I would show rook c7, rook... I will show with the moves. Rook c7, rook e7, rook... Oh, wait, okay, sorry. I thought we can play this, but the knight is covering this.
The knight is
not possible. My idea was to bring the knight to e6 with a check. Yeah.
Yeah, whoever missed the game earlier, can you remind me whose game it was where the king was right in the center and there were two knights around and two rooks around the king, and that king was better defended than the king behind the pawns? Me of that because those knights, because of how well they were placed in the center around the king, despite white having their queen and the rook there, it just couldn't do anything because those knights were just covering everything. So, you know, knights can definitely be very scary at times, especially when they're coordinated together.
Exactly, but now I a little bit don't understand. Now there are like two pawns in the center, so not already at the not only one pawn isolated, but two pawns which are connected to each other. And the question now for Benjamin: knight jumped to c3, checking the king. King went to d3. If king goes back to e2, it means there is going to be knight c3 against checking, and it would be a draw with the repetition. Of course, it's not enough for white, so rook f8 was played.
Yeah, what do you think about those two pawns in the center? I don't quite like them. I mean, like, yeah, from my perspective, I don't like it. So,
yeah, I mean, like sometimes, you know, for example, such pawns which are easily attacked can be named as a hanging pawns. Currently, it's an endgame. We cannot name them hanging pawns because we don't have enough pieces to attack. But if we just compare black's, you know, pawns, there are 3 pawn islands for black and there are 2 pawn islands for white, which normally should, you know, prefer white because, for example, in this case, if pawn takes, this would be another weakness. So it would be another isolated pawn and it would be a weakness. But of course, black is not forced to, you know, take. Maybe there is, you know, something else here to play in this position.
Yeah, maybe if there was no f-pawn, those pawns would probably be much worse for white. But I guess because of the pawn break on f4, it's not easy to hold them.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's like e4, but they're also like, holding a lot of squares so that king cannot really get out. So that's kind of important. And knight c5, basically checking and forking at the same time. King c2 is the only move to protect the pawn. And now maybe, okay, I don't know, e4. No, e4 shouldn't be a move because then it would weaken so much. So maybe now takes, but I don't know. Now this is again weak. Now we return, to our isolated pawn, but it's already an endgame and it can be also a passer.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you have to be really, careful, and you have to be 100% sure that, you can try to win that pawn, to name it a weakness, but it's not easy at all. And okay, actually, wait, trading the knights. Okay, the problem was that there would be potentially. Now the main point for black is to block everything so that there are no breaks, nothing, and just solid draw. And for white, there should be some kind of way to try to to push with those pawns to win this pawn, which is very, very difficult. And now knight c5. Now if knight takes and the pawn takes and then pawn goes to c4. There is f5. You should consider that, but I don't know if it works. Now knight d4, I guess, protecting. And f5 is possible, but should be probably easily protected by black. Yeah, king is blocking everything. That's a problem.
Yeah, and that pawn on d5 is kind of problematic.
But h5, so that if pawn takes and try to win this and just push here. So what was this? Knight d6. Maybe he
I'm
wants
a little bit scared of white's queenside position with that isolated pawn 2 in the middle. It seems like there could be a potential pass pawn if that knight is moved on the queen side, but then that, d pawn in the center is also a pass pawn. So maybe you can create, what is it called? That trousers. Is it called trousers?
Yeah, I mean, it's possible. But the question is, who is going to create? What is happening here? Knight h7. The pawn is ready to march to g8. What is happening on this board? This pawn is ready to march.
It's moving very quickly.
This pawn, what is happening? Okay, actually now, wait a second. If king manages somehow...
Okay.
Wait. Okay, no, probably it's a draw. Probably it should be a draw. But...
Well, Bach does have 6 seconds on the clock versus 22 seconds. Very low on time here.
Okay, maybe there is still some kind of try, but no, it looks...
Yeah. There's an opportunity for a blunder. So,
always.
But,
always. No, it looks like a draw.
Yeah, it's looking like a draw.
Okay. Managed to draw this endgame. Levon Aronian drawing the endgame is winning the match against Benjamin Bloch. What exciting games were there, and huge opportunities actually for Benjamin to beat Levon Aronian, right?
Right. Great game.
Great game. Very, very complicated endgame, absolutely. All right, we have actually all games finished for today, and division 3. So here we can see the winner brackets of the Division 2. Vincent Keimer is going to play against Levon Aronian. We just seen the match that Benjamin Bock was trying to win against Levon. He was successful in the first game, but unfortunately. And it means that Levon is going to play tomorrow in the grand final against Vincent Keimer. One more time challenging him. Because remember, Elena, they played today actually. They played and Vincent managed to win pretty confidently with 2.5 points.
Oh yeah, he did great.
Here we have the result. Here was the final. Vincent Keimer, first they played a draw, and then with the 2 wins, he after another, he won. So yeah, probably Vincent should be a huge favorite in that match for tomorrow. What do you think?
I don't know if you would put it like that, but I guess you would say luck or whatever. It's in his favor.
Yeah, and here we have, this loser brackets we're following at the very end, final of the loser brackets. Grishuk managed to win against Bortnik, and that's actually, we had already before, repeating boss divisions in the final of the winner brackets was Sarana facing Grishuk and winning him actually 3-0. And tomorrow, Grishuk will say hello to Sarana one more time and say, okay, let's play one more match and see if you are really, should be the winner of the tournament. So, I mean, of the third division. So that's what's going to happen tomorrow in the grand final.
Yeah. Also, I meant to say the odds are in his favor, and my brain blanked out for a second. It's been such a long day for him.
Commentating, covering this. How did you enjoy this time?
Oh, I enjoyed it a lot. And it was, I think really my first time for real commentating. Well, I've done it once before, so it was a good experience, and it was also great commentating with you. And I also, of course, feel like I've learned a lot. We went through a lot of, chess concepts and ideas and, even opening theory. So it's definitely been interesting.
Maybe useful also for your chess.
Oh, yeah. Very useful. I'll definitely apply what I've learned to my chess. And plus watching these games, too, in the way that, these amazing players, play and the moves they make. There's a lot to learn.
Of course, it was a huge opportunity, I think, for both of us to, be here to talk to the people from all over the world, showing them the games, even though we're not like the top grandmaster, grandmaster who are commentating there on the main channel, but I think just
because there are a lot of players in chess who aren't, who
aren't grandmasters.
Exactly. So I'm sure they're curious about what's going on in the games, more in depth. So it was nice to be able to really discuss those games and go in depth and explain the simple concepts.
Yeah, I'm really, really great. It was happening. It was really great. So thank you, Elena, for joining me. It was really nice to.
You as well. Thank you. It was great.
And thanks to the viewers, to everyone who has been following, watching every day especially. It was really nice to have so many positive comments and support during the commentary and questions and everything.
Absolutely. I mean, maybe this is a good time to ask the crowd and see if they have any questions.
Yeah, if you probably have some questions to ask or to us about the tournament or us separately or together, the question, and we could. Okay, that's an interesting question because
that's
I'm not a
hard
grandmaster. I'm not a grand. If I was a grandmaster, maybe I could tell you. But I mean,
any grandmasters in chat, maybe they'll tell you.
For sure. Okay, so about this question of the end game. First of all, in order to reach to an end game, you have to play very good opening. You have to play a good middle game. So of course, end games are important. To at the end, for example, if you have a rook and the king, you have to know how to checkmate with the rook and the king. And obviously, if you have rook and the pawn against the rook, you have to know how to manage to draw against that, or how to win in that end game. End games are very important, of course, but there is this huge stage of the game. So many games have been finished much earlier than the end game. You just and you try to build good plans using the strategy. I think you might be also good in the end game. So just focus on the first part of the game first, and asking about the end games. It's already I think it's later.
It's funny because I started off with end game for the most part. I think that helped me a lot personally.
There was a question if you can checkmate with 2 bishops. Elena, can you checkmate with 2 bishops?
I've never tried. The opportunity has never come up. Can you?
Yeah, I can. Yeah, it's pretty easy. It's basically like with the rooks, but diagonally. So it's the other
there you go.
Your other question is if you can checkmate with a bishop and the knight. Can you?
I do believe you can checkmate with the bishop and the knight and the king, right? You need all 3 pieces, or yeah, I believe that you can, but it's one of the most difficult checkmates.
No, I mean
right?
if you can do it. That
that
was a question to us,
I have better things to learn than how to have a million other things to learn. There's no point in focusing on the check or the knight and bishop checkmate at the moment.
That's exactly what I was talking right now before. In order to get that endgame, I have seen players trying to in order to checkmate with the bishop and the knight. Okay, I know how to checkmate with I would checkmate if I have position right now. I would checkmate easily with the bishop, and I know how to do it. But in the real game, I have never also tried to I didn't have this position, but I had it once when I was 12 years old, when I had no idea about it. I was first time having at the board bishop and the knight with the king against the king, and I'm looking at this and I have no idea what to do, and I have no idea if it's winning, if it's just a draw. And it was very funny because at that moment I came to the arbiter and I said, it's a draw, right? Just claim the draw. And he was coming to me. I'm not allowed to say anything here. It's very funny.
Oh. Just for the checkmate alone, I think it's very rare. So I don't know if I would invest that time into it.
There's a question about Armageddon. If you're in an Armageddon situation, how much time would you beat on a close match? I don't even know. Would you prefer playing white or black in the Armageddon match?
Well, that depends, really, but I don't.
If you play
know,
Vincent
honestly.
Keimer.
Yeah, I don't know. Okay, that's a rough one. Oh man, no, I don't know. I don't know what to tell you guys about that one. How about you?
It's also very much depends on the player you're playing. If you know that have been having not so many draws, you should rather take white. I would say just beating 10 minutes, like Bortnik does constantly, 10 minutes, and then just going for a win with white. But if there are many draws or around equal opponent, you can also have this opportunity to have this draw odds with blacks. Know a lot about the end games. You can also understand what are your goals for the middle game, and if you want to trade some pieces, to which end games do you would you rather go? Like, for example, if you have like, if you're up a pawn and you have potential to win position, you don't trade all the pieces till you have like opposite colored bishops, right? Because it's almost likely going to be a draw. So of course, this you know, the decisions in the middle game are based on many times also in which endgame you would like to have later. I think it's actually a very important point, right? So yeah, don't want to go to the losing pawn endgame or something like this, like Levon Aronian actually did in the previous game.
Yeah, that was. I wonder what he was thinking in that game, but that was interesting.
Okay, I don't know. There's someone wanted to visit Germany to play chess. Is there a big annual open tournament you would recommend? Tom was asking. Okay, probably question is to me because I live in Germany. So actually it's a perfect timing of this question because there is going to be this. Remember, if you remember, I told you like the Keimer won this Grenke Open tournament, and that was like Grenke Classic. This was one of the largest chess tournaments in Europe with almost 2,000 players participating. It was so huge.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, due to COVID, it stopped. So that's why there was no tournament in 2020, in 2021, 22, 23, and now in 2024, actually at the end of the March, it's going to happen, and it's going to happen here in the city where I live, in Karlsruhe. So everyone is welcome to.
Are you joining?
I don't know if I will. At the same, there are going to be like Magnus Carlsen, Dean Liren, Vincent Keimer, Maxime Vachier-Lagrave, who else? I don't remember. 2 more players going to play there. I already forgot the names, but they're going to play like on the stage, and all the other players are going to play the open tournament. So it's really huge chance, for you to play in the same hall with the Magnus. It's like huge, right? And Dean Liren, of course, he's world champion currently.
Yeah, no, that would be amazing.
So everyone come to Karlsruhe at the end of March. It's going to be, so it's called Grenke Open or Grenke Classic. You can check it in the internet. There are already actually 400 or 500 registrations. It has been opened just a few days ago, the registration, and it's already so.
Yeah, let me fly to Europe real quick.
You can stay here if you want. So
all right.
But okay, like the tickets are.
It takes.
Maybe it's like 8 hours. No, something like.
If it's 8, that's to California. That's not bad. I looked at flights to Australia, and it's like 48-hour flights from here. Just like, yeah, I don't think I want to fly for 48 hours.
Yeah,
9-ish?
exactly.
That's not bad at all. Are you serious? Fly to Europe like every weekend. It's not that bad if it's only 8-9 hours. So.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like, it's like, imagine just coming for like a tournament for 5 days and like spending 2 days in the road. There is also some
local flight within Germany. Oh, okay. Never mind. I take back what I said. But anyways, go on.
There is a question. What is your favorite piece?
Yeah, I think we discussed one earlier, and I said that I like the solo knight, but I like the bishop pairs.
Mm-hmm. Percy is a nice piece. I would pick Percy, yes, to jump. There's a question. How about learning middle game pawn structures and pawn breaks How would you do it, and how important is it? Okay, the pawn structures are very important because there are typical pawn structures which are similar to different openings, so it doesn't matter, like sometimes few openings have the same pawn structure, or like Carlsbad can happen from Queen's Gambit, or it can happen from Caro-Kann, and then you have to know, the plans. What do you do with the pawn structure like this or like this? It's
Yeah, I started studying chess structures by I forgot the author's name, but his last name is Flores. Just so I can understand the pawn structures a little bit better.
Yeah.
But that's the thing with chess, there's always more to learn. There's just doesn't stop, so
there is so much to learn. You're absolutely okay. I don't know. Probably there are just already. I don't know. There were just comments. There were no really questions.
We can wrap up then.
Okay, there is like a question. What piece should be on Valentine's Day necklace for a chess girl? Wait. Where was mine, actually? I had here somewhere. I was wearing it a couple of... here, found. Okay, I just have so many. I have the crown, which is like a queen, probably. Which I was wearing a couple of days ago on the commentary. So that I would have a queen. And what do you have?
Repeat the question. I read a comment.
So there was a question that which piece should girlfriend have on the or girl has. I don't remember exactly. So which piece on the necklace should be?
Oh, on the necklace?
On Valentine's Day. All right. Okay, there is a question. When will both of you stream together again?
Yeah, we have to figure that out, right? We are in different time structures. Our time structure. Oh my gosh, the chat is getting to me. Time. What is it? We're in different time zones, so yeah. But we definitely can sometime. Maybe we can do like an informative lesson or something. Something fun.
Yeah, for
sure. It doesn't be serious. Yeah.
Yeah, because we have been so serious this few days. We should have some fun. Maybe some odds match,
But yeah, no, my bangs don't disturb my eyebrows. Somebody asked. No, they're getting long, but like I what is it called? Like the blowout look for the eyebrows, or not the eyebrows, the hair, the bangs, and then they just kind of sit like that. But right now they're getting a little long, so I have to cut them and fix them. But
that's very tough to. I very very rarely. I'm just posting a story that we are live commentating, and I'm not checking who's writing. Okay, but yeah, definitely. I mean, since now we finally know each other, because we had no idea about each other. We streamed in a different times. We never raid each other. We didn't know about existence of each other because
basically. Yeah, it's sometimes hard because the time zones, once again, like you don't catch streamers sometimes at all.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why so that's why we're actually, maybe we'll try to find some time which prefers like us both that, and
definitely. You're not, because it was 11 a.m. for me when we started and 5 p.m. for you, so it's not too bad.
Yeah, for sure. Wait a second. Okay, I was just scared that we missed something at some moment because there was some comments from the arbiters about some game, and I was like, maybe we missed something, and there is one more game ongoing, but no, I don't see anything. I was a little bit scared. I was like, okay, what? Wait, it's Division 2. Yeah, right. So we had already everything. We had. There shouldn't be anything else.
Division 4. Yeah, there is a Division 4 the whole time. We just missed it.
Yeah. Okay. No. It was just a confirmation that tomorrow Vincent will play with white pieces against Levon Aronian. Okay. There is like okay. That's now I understand why they were writing this. Okay. The point is okay. Now I understand why they were writing, because before I couldn't understand why they're writing that Vincent started with white. I was like shocked that the game is going on. But the point is that since so basically it depends who is going to play white or black in the next game regarding the rating. So tomorrow, even though Grishuk comes up to the from the loser bracket to Sarana, he's going to start white because Grishuk is higher seeded, he's higher rated, and okay, basically Vincent starts with white, and because he's higher rated than Levon, maybe that's the solution. Okay.
Well, the date for our event too, or once again the dates.
Yeah, exactly.
For the next few events, since we're reaching an end for this one soon.
For sure. So here already knowing a lot about the tour format, but here is actually the schedule. You can share what is the schedule for the Champions Chess Tour for the next event.
Yeah, so of course we just had the first event, which was on the 31st, and it's running until the 7th. The next event will be in a few months on May the 8th until the 15th. And then, of course, July, September, and then the finals will be on December. So at the end of this year, where they will obviously announce, who the champion is, or we will see who the champion is.
Yeah, for sure. So maybe we'll be here again in May together. Who knows that, right?
Right. Possibly.
Official.
We'll be more ready than ever.
Yeah, so it was really a nice time being with everyone here, commentating with Elena, meeting so many people, and thanks to the viewers for all of the support.
Yes, thank you so much. It was great. Had a fun time. And I'm ready to go get some rest now.
Yeah, exactly. So you're getting rest, and to everyone who would like to keep a little bit chill party.
We have the radio right now.
Exactly. So if you would like to have some small party on my channel, you're welcome. So you can come. I will just go live in a few minutes after we finish the stream, so you can stay there and maybe some karaoke party. Yesterday we had some karaoke party actually because it was enough
fun.
with chess.
I think somebody mentioned you were singing well. So
trying.
That's what that was about. All right. Take care, everybody.
We'll see you in a few minutes on my channel, and hopefully together with Lena for another commentary in May or earlier, who knows. Or for some not only commentary, maybe we'll do some collaboration together.
Absolutely.
Okay, goodbye to everyone. Bye.
All right, goodbye.